Chapter 5290. That was why it was said that a petty thing like a woman really couldn't be offended casually. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. Arbor looked up and down at Duo Shanming with some astonishment. That kind of caring gaze made Duo Shanming's heart burn with anger. My father won't let you go. Duo Shanming roared angrily. Don't think that you can keep me here for the rest of my life. Arbor curved the corner of her lips. Locking this person in the star domain, Duo Shanming's father would never be able to find this son of a bitch. Besides, Duo Shanming's father, Duo Chang, had already run away with his tail between his legs after the Battle of Forgetting River. He couldn't even protect himself, how could he think of such a son? Arbor couldn't be bothered with his hoarse roar and looked back at him. You really don't want to leave? Thinking back, Duo Shanming was full of regret. He might as well go to the yellow sand to eat sand. No wonder this vicious woman had looked at him as if he was an idiot. He actually strongly requested to stay in this tower of punishment, to stay in this devil's land. Call me when you admit your mistake. Arbor looked at him meaningfully. In this world, not everyone will tolerate your willfulness. Arbor carried the small tree Chio and left, leaving Duo Shanming alone. Duo Shanming angrily shouted at the place where she disappeared. Do you think I will submit to a vicious woman like you? Stop dreaming. Half an hour later. Duo Shanming hugged his head and cried bitterly on the ground, trembling as he looked at the rustling trees around him. Let me out, let me out. I admit my mistake, I admit defeat, I admit my mistake, I admit my mistake. Please let me out. Your Excellency, please let me out. In just half an hour, he was cut by the blades of the thousand-knife forest to the point where he wished he was dead. The skin all over his body was almost bleeding. It was just that the bleeding was very slow, and the cuts on his skin were not deep. But it was the terrible feeling of a blunt knife cutting his flesh that kept provoking his nerves. He did not know what the rules of this saber forest were. He did not know when the next wave of sabers would fall. The feeling of waiting for death was unbearable. Master, how long do you think he can last? Chio asked with a strange expression. He never thought that there would be a fool who would insist on staying on the 6th floor of the Tower of Punishment. It was rather comical. No wonder Master Silver had been looking at that person as if he was an idiot. This was truly foolish to the extreme. The Master Silver had asked him several times already, but this fool was still stubborn and insisted on staying. It was really fated, and there was no one to blame. 2 days later, at the boundary of Spirit Peak Valley. In front of a large camp, many soldiers were setting up camp in an orderly manner amidst the chaos and cooking. Duan Yu was sitting inside the tent in a daze as he held a jade messenger talisman in his hand. Suddenly, he heard a clear and resonant cry coming from outside the tent, and his spirits involuntarily perked up. He hurriedly opened the curtain and walked out, looking up at the sky. He saw a large bird with green wings rapidly flying over from the other side of the sky. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in the sky above the large tent. Countless soldiers rushed over from all directions. They were ready for battle, and their faces were cold and solemn. The soldiers of the archery camp vigilantly raised their bows and aimed at the sky. Duan Yu hastily waved his hand. Withdraw, don't move. Let him come over. Chapter 5291. The soldiers in the outer ring retreated slightly and put away their bows and weapons in unison. Upon closer inspection, they actually saw that the cyan bird seemed to be carrying 5 people on its back. Qinghuan let out a cry and swooped down. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a human and stood there with a straight back. The other 5 people also swiftly flew over and stood behind Qinghuan, respectfully bowing to this Tsang province's emperor. Duan Yu's heart stirred, and he asked softly, "Do you have a letter?" Qinghuan glanced at him and dug around in her sleeve for a long time before taking out a crumpled letter. She looked at him in confusion. "How did you know there was a letter?" I guessed. Duan Yu took the letter and skimmed through it. The little stoic actually wrote quite a lot. Those 5 people's origins and experiences informed him, as well as some of her plans. She even left a message at the end, telling him to pay attention to his safety. Duan Yu's lips curled up, and he untied a jade ornament from his waist and tossed it to Qinghuan. Give it to her. Qinghuan's expression was a bit conflicted. If Crown Prince the Great found out about this, he would definitely skin him alive. Wasn't this just a private exchange? Flirting with eyes? Bah, a jade ornament to express his feelings. No way, absolutely no way. What are you thinking about? It's for my godson. Duan Yu waved his hand. Go. When Qinghuan turned around and flew away, her mind was still a bit muddled. What the hell was a godson? Who was his godson? Why did he give something to his godson to Master Silver for baby Imo? The figure that was flying all the way suddenly tilted. Qinghuan almost fell from the sky, flying crookedly all the way. Pitiful Crown Prince the Great, his son hadn't even been born yet, but half of him was already snatched away. Starfire illuminated the night, and the moonlight was as warm as water. 30,000 elites from the 3 provinces set up camp here to settle down. Although there were many people, the entire army was silent. Only the occasional crackling of barbecued food could be heard. After Duan Yu entered the tent, he held that letter in a daze for a long time. Several hidden guards paced back and forth outside, exchanging glances with each other. One of them couldn't hold it in anymore and simply flipped open the tent to enter. His Majesty was sitting in front of the desk, thinking about something, and had yet to come back to his senses. Your Majesty. The shadow guard hurriedly called out and stepped back to let a soldier come in to light the lamp. After the lights lit up, Duan Yu also returned to his senses. He nodded at them and said, "Serve the meal." The few shadow guards heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked people to send in the food and drinks. Actually, it didn't make much of a difference to Duan Yu whether he ate or not. However, these elite soldiers of the 3 prefectures had somehow developed the habit of eating 3 meals a day, so he just let nature take its course. More than 80% of them had broken through to the god realm and were god masters. It didn't matter how often they ate. This 3-meal problem reminded him of his Zhou. When Charles raised these soldiers on the snowy island, it must be those weird subordinates of Charles who raised the elites of the 3 provinces. They were all following his Qiao. Just looking at them made him feel incomparably close. So be it if you eat. It won't waste much food or spend a few spirit coins. Duan Yu picked up his chopsticks and ate a few mouthfuls before expressionlessly putting down his chopsticks. Why is it so noisy outside? The few hidden guards also heard it. That clamor was not far from the camp, and it sounded like a woman's shriek. It was ear-piercing. Chapter 5292. This subordinate will go take a look right now. Soon, Ying brought back news. Your Majesty, it's a group of bandits who caught 2 women and passed by here. Duan Yu replied with an "oh." Seeing that he didn't continue, everyone knew that he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. However, the sudden increase in the volume of the crying caused the camp to become a bit chaotic. Ying swiftly dashed out of the tent and coldly looked at the 2 women who were rampaging inside the camp. Duan Yu walked to his side and expressionlessly looked at the rowdy scene. Several bare-chested burly men were furiously whipping at the 2 women with rods and whips. The 2 women wailed and stumbled before abruptly pouncing toward the large tent. Ying instantly pulled out the sword at his waist and held it in front of him. If the 2 women had taken one more step forward, they would have thrown themselves onto the sword and died. Seeing this, the 2 women wailed and fell to the ground with a plop. They simultaneously looked up and raised their hands, begging bitterly, "Save, save me. Your Majesty." When Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing, hurried over with his men, he saw his good king staring expressionlessly at the 2 women on the ground. 8th young Sir Chi Rui, followed behind Rong Qing and said with a chuckle, "Don't act in front of His Majesty. Let alone His Majesty, even we can see through these little tricks with a glance." Prince Rong walked up and questioned with a frown, "Why didn't you surround them? Let them barge in front of His Majesty?" The surrounding soldiers crowded forward with sharp gazes and turned their swords and spears around to aim at the two women sprawled on the ground. The dozen or so bandits who barged into the camp. Those people were startled and dumbfounded. 8th young Sir Chi said with a chuckle, "Everyone, don't tell me you think that the elites of the 3 provinces are so weak that you rookies can casually charge in. How can you be so naive and pure?" 8th young Sir Chi chuckled. "If it weren't for Prince Rong's signal to let you people in, do you think you could enter the center of the large tent in this important camp?" One of the bandits gritted his teeth and deliberately put on a smile. "Everyone, is there some misunderstanding? We came here by accident because we wanted to catch these 2 runaway women." Rong Qing glanced at the person who spoke and waved her hand. Dozens of swords and sabers were pressed against the man's back. As long as he uttered another word, the swords and sabers would pierce his back. 30,000 elite troops from 3 prefectures are stationed here, all pointing their swords and sabers at you. No matter how skilled and courageous a person was, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat and his heartbeat quickened. These people were actually able to tell at a glance that they were not trespassing unintentionally, but had done so intentionally. So the chaos in front of the camp just now was to lure them into the important area of the camp so that they could catch the turtle in the jar. Duan Yu's sharp gaze shifted slightly. The group of soldiers immediately got into formation and charged forward. In a short while, they killed the group of bandits until only 2 were left. The Emperor of Zhangzhou didn't even blink when he dealt with so many people in a matter of minutes. His merciless and cold demeanor scared the remaining 2 bandits to the point that their hearts trembled. "Can you tell me now? What did the City of Shadows send you here for?" some young sir asked with a grin. One of the bandits knelt on the ground with a plop and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. "Your Majesty, spare my life. Your Majesty, please spare my life." Chapter 5293. This lowly one is only an ordinary disciple of the City of Shadows. "Yes, Master instructed me to investigate the situation and find out what's going on." Master said, looking down from the reflection wall, "There seems to be a figure moving. It seems that Spirit Peak Valley has infiltrated." "That's right, I've long heard of it. The City of Shadows is extremely high, and the reflection wall at the back mountain can see everything within 1,000 kilometers. Realization dawned on 8th young Master Chi's face. No wonder someone immediately came to scout the situation as soon as they arrived at Spirit Peak Valley. Presumably, the City Lord of the City of Shadows was already aware of their arrival. Duan Yu swept an indifferent glance over them and raised his hand slightly before turning to enter. Soon, 4 wretched screams were heard outside the tent. Morale was greatly boosted, and roars boomed like thunder. "His Majesty has ordered that we rest on the ground for 2 hours before setting off for the City of Shadows overnight. They should be able to reach the City of Shadows gates by daybreak." However, since the other party was already aware of their movements, they would obviously be on guard. They just didn't know what would remain of the City of Shadows under the hooves of 30,000 elite soldiers. After passing through Spirit Peak Valley, the 30,000 soldiers rushed to the City of Shadows under the cover of dusk. In fact, this battle with the City of Shadows could be said to be an overwhelming battle where the strong bullied the weak. How many people did the City of Shadows have? Could it use 3,000 disciples? Or 5,000? If everything went smoothly, it wouldn't take more than half a day to conquer the City of Shadows. However, when the soldiers arrived at the city gates, 8th young Master Chi and company couldn't help but be startled. The city gates were wide open, and there was no one at the entrance. It was a desolate sight. Duan Yu blinked. They ran away. Where could they have run in such a short time? Rong Qing frowned and leaped off her spirit horse. The drawbridge at the city gates had already been lowered. Looking from here, the opposite side of the drawbridge was silent and empty. It looks like a trap, eighth young Master Qi muttered softly. Duan Yu nodded in agreement. It was indeed a trap, and it wasn't an ordinary trap. This empty city stratagem was to lure them inside. Eighth young Master Qi turned to ask, Your Majesty, how about we summon our flying beasts and fly over? In terms of conspiracy theories, the suspension bridge in front of them must have been destroyed by someone. Even though it appeared to be in perfect condition, it was only the enemy's camouflage. The corners of Crown Prince Rong's mouth twitched. His Majesty has many teleportation talisman arrays. It would be a waste not to use them. Let's use them. Duan Yu expressionlessly glanced at him before suddenly pulling out a storage talisman. Come in. Eighth young Master Qi's jaw almost dropped to the ground. Stay behind. You and Qi Ba stay behind. The rest of you go in first. Since the other party had come up with a strange empty fort strategy and didn't seem to want to fight them head-on, then they shouldn't blame him for making a fool of himself. Rong Qing silently took the storage talismans and put them into the storage talismans in groups of 1,000. Fuck, just how many storage talismans did the little stoic crown princess give His Majesty? Why do I feel that Her Majesty will make me bleed? Crown Prince Rong silently stuffed a blank jade talisman into his waist and threw the rest back to His Majesty. He really couldn't converse with a nouveau riche. He felt a bit of a headache whenever he saw those talismans. In the blink of an eye, only 4 people remained out of the 30,000 elites. Chapter 5294. The corners of 8th young Master Qi's eyes twitched as he weakly turned to look at the expressionless shadow guard. This shadow guard seemed to be called Ing. He was often seen accompanying His Majesty. He was expressionless and icy, so it was obvious that he was groomed by the deceptive His Majesty. His Majesty is truly extravagant. 8th young Master Qi was truly at a loss for words. As the number 1 talisman patrician family in Song Province, their Qi clan had never seen anyone take out so many storage jade talismans. It's alright. Duan Yu put away the jade talismans and stored the storage talismans containing 30,000 elite soldiers into the space ring on his finger. He then said, Let's go. At his command, the other 3 leaped at the same time and followed him across the suspension bridge. 8th young Master Qi even tossed a flying dagger onto the bridge, waiting to watch a good show. To everyone's surprise, with a thump, the dagger stabbed into the center of the suspension bridge. The entire bridge only trembled slightly for a moment before it stopped shaking. Shadow Guarding lowered his eyes and secretly twitched the corner of his mouth. His Majesty, 8th young Master Qi, and heir apparent Rong Qing. These 3 people with super high IQ combined were analyzing the possibility of someone setting a trap on the suspension bridge. They definitely couldn't step on it or they would fall into a trap. In the end the other party didn't set any traps at all, and they were the only ones who were nervous for nothing. 8th young Master Qi pointed at the suspension bridge and said, Do the opposite and treat it with caution. Heir apparent Rong nodded in agreement. That's probably the case. Can you two stop praising each other's IQ? His Majesty has already flown far away. Seeing that Duan Yu's figure was as fast as lightning and left them far behind, the 3 hastily chased after him with all their might. However, as they chased, their expressions slowly froze. Something wasn't right. Why was the distance between them not too far and not too close? It was as if His Majesty was always in front, but they couldn't catch up no matter how hard they chased. 8th young Master Qi was the first to react. It's a talisman array. Good lord, there was no trap on the suspension bridge, but a trap was set up after crossing it. It was even a trap array for Dao obstruction. Come with me. At that moment, His Majesty's voice rang in their ears. The eighth young Master Qi turned around and almost broke out in a cold sweat. He saw that His Majesty was following closely behind the three of them like a ghost, only a few feet away. However, the three of them did not notice that he had appeared behind them. "Oh my God, can you not scare me? That's not right. I clearly saw you running ahead of us just now." Duan Yu waved his hand, and a guide talisman floated up and down in front of him. "I ran for a while and realized that something was wrong, so I turned back to look for you." He took out a thunder fire ball from his pocket. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Duan Yu remained silent. With another wave of his hand, he released Yi and the others. "Lead the way to Mu Jinghong's residence." After saying that, he casually threw out a thunder fireball. With a loud rumble, the brick wall behind them suddenly collapsed, giving Yi and the others a fright. "Please follow me, Your Majesty." Yi didn't dare to say anything else and quickly led Duan Yu's group of 4 to Mu Jinghong's dormitory. Loud rumbles could be heard along the way. Duan Yu threw out firearms along the way. When he saw everyone looking over, he kindly asked, "Want one to play with?" Chapter 5295. Rong Qing and the others glanced at him exasperatedly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. You can play by yourself." His Majesty seemed to be having a lot of fun as he forcefully demolished the nearby buildings and bombed them into a mess. As his subordinates, the most important thing for them was as long as His Majesty was happy. "I'll blast a path out here so we can walk more safely." Duan Yu turned around and explained to them, "There are trapping arrays nearby, so we might get trapped inside if we're not careful. Don't worry, I'll just blow it up. And look, there seems to be no path ahead, but a path will appear after I blow it up, right?" Yi and the others looked at each other in bewilderment. They felt that this Zhangzhou emperor behind them was a bit similar to their little master. Similarly deceptive. The same thought flashed through their minds at the same time. The entire city of shadows seemed to have sunk into a dense fog. With their cultivation, they couldn't see more than 20 meters ahead. They heard His Majesty urging them from behind. "Hurry, don't worry. I'll clear a path for you from behind. You just need to run in the direction you know. Don't worry about anything ahead, I'll clear all obstacles for you." "As you command." Yi and the others nodded respectfully and started sprinting forward. The 5 of them had a good sense of direction, so they only needed to look around for a bit before deciding on a direction. After the 5 of them sprinted forward, Duan Yu, Rong Qing, and Qi Ba also followed. "Your Majesty, it's easy to set up a trap ahead." Boom! The sound of a thunder fire bullet's explosion shook the sky. Yi and the others silently shut their mouths as they watched His Majesty continuously take out all kinds of firearms of various sizes from his inner world. "Your Majesty, there's a silver hook bridge ahead that connects the 2 inner cities on the left and right. The city lord lives in the Eagle City on the left. It's very likely that there's an ambush up there." Boom! Boom boom boom. Just as Yi finished speaking, he saw His Majesty untie a small green bamboo tube from his waist and shoot a string of concealed weapons at the nearby silver hook bridge that was buried in the fog. The power of the 9 thunder jade heavens was naturally incomparable to the thunder fireball from before. This series of crazy explosions caused E1 and the others to be dumbfounded. His Majesty was definitely a tycoon, a peerless tycoon. Where did all these hidden weapons come from? There were all kinds of hidden weapons, each with their own power. Along the way, they watched as he changed his tactics and blasted them all the way. Dozens of rapid breathing sounds could be faintly heard from the fog, and then it became silent. Rong Qing and Qi Ba looked at each other. These people were really unlucky. They were hiding in some dark corner and waiting to ambush them. In the end, they met His Majesty, who did not play by the rules. A round of random gunfire didn't give them any advantage at all. Instead, many people lost their lives. City Lord Mu Jinghong, who was standing in front of the main hall of Eagle City, was jumping up and down in anger as he cursed. Mu Xiaoxue, who was hiding behind him, was already trembling in fear. Father? Now, what should we do? Today, I worked overtime and came back late. I didn't have time to write. I'm going to sleep. Let me inform you. Make up for it tomorrow. I probably have to visit Grandma in the hospital during the day. Judging from the situation, if I don't make up for it during the day, I'll make up for it at night. I'll finish it. Chapter 5296. Mu Jinghong was annoyed. At this moment, how could she be in the mood to comfort her frightened little daughter? Beside Mu Xiaoxue stood a slightly plump young man with a smile on his round face. Seeing Mu Xiaoxue frightened, he hurriedly stepped forward and took the initiative to put his arm around her shoulders. He comforted her in a low voice, "Sister Xiaoxue, don't be afraid. Nothing will happen. Brother Kong." Mu Xiaoxue wiped her tears with a handkerchief and quietly glanced at her father's back. She said softly, "I'm worried about father." Kong Yaofa hugged Mu Xiaoxue and comforted her again, "Don't worry, Uncle Mu has a way to deal with it." "Is that so?" Mu Xiaoxue's gaze swept across the screen wall in front of her. She saw flames soaring into the sky. Countless buildings in the city had been razed to the ground by firearms. Judging from the situation, could the City of Shadows really survive the night? "Not good, City Lord, City Lord." A cry of alarm came from behind everyone. Mu Jinghong's eyelids twitched fiercely, and he fell into a deep rage. Since 2 hours ago, he had been receiving all kinds of not good reports. The news came one after another, and there was no good news at all. When was there a time when it wasn't bad? There was no better news, only worse. So when he heard the words, "not good now," he was furious and wanted to kill the guard in front of him. When the guard who came to report the situation saw the city lord's murderous expression, he immediately took a step back in panic. He knelt on the ground with a plop and kowtowed repeatedly, City Lord, Madam, she." Mu Jinghong roared, "If you have something to say it quickly. Why are you stuttering?" It was tiring to listen. How could he raise such a group of useless subordinates? What happened to Zhuoyan? Say it. Madam packed up a lot of valuables and left from the back slope with eldest miss and eldest young master. What? Mu Jinghong almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Zhuoyan actually left with her children? Was there anything more despairing and infuriating than this? When the city was destroyed, his wife and children abandoned him first. This was his, Mu Jinghong's, good wife and good children. In the face of a great disaster, each of them flew off separately. This was really good, really good. Mu Jinghong was so angry that she almost broke her teeth from clenching them. She looked up to the sky and let out an angry roar as if she had gone mad. Mu Xiaoxue hid beside Kong Yaofa and was so scared that she did not even dare to breathe. Gu Yixuan, who was standing behind the two, clenched her fists tightly as she looked at the chubby young man with uncertain eyes. This fatty was the young master of the Kong family and was originally the fiancé of the eldest miss, Mu Feixia. Later on, for some unknown reason, he got together with little junior sister. Now that he had broken off the engagement with eldest miss, he claimed to be little junior sister's fiancé, which made Gu Yixuan gnash her teeth in hatred. He never thought that after killing Zhao Yi, another Kong Yaofa would jump out. How could he not be enraged? Gu Yixuan's face was gloomy as he looked at the two people standing in front of him. He thought to himself, one day, I'll kill this Kong Yaofa as well. Big brother, big brother. Wearing 2 thick fur cloaks, the third city lord ran over with a sullen face. He could not help but ask, Big brother, do you really want to join Tianyun? Just now, his second brother sent someone to inform him to prepare for war. Only then did he wake up from his dream and suddenly realize. Chapter 5297. Previously, he stood up for his disciple, Sha Nisu, and went to the banquet in the Palace of Divine Prefecture. The little crown princess pointed out that Sha Nisu was the disciple of Tian Yun, but he did not believe it. Could it be that the arrogant and despotic crown princess really did not wrongly accuse his disciple? Looking at his eldest brother's situation, it seemed that he was very familiar with the people of Tian Yun. The second city lord slowly followed behind the reckless third brother. Along the way, he sighed and said, "Third brother, what else is there to ask?" "Second brother, you already knew." The third city lord stared at the second city lord with an incredulous expression. "So my disciple, Sha Nisu, is really an alchemist cultivated by you? Why? Why did she join Tian Yun? Isn't she courting death?" Now the city of shadows has become the target of the three provinces. Mu Jinghong's face was very ugly, and he interrupted his words angrily. "I haven't questioned you about Sha Nisu acting on her own, and now you're questioning your eldest brother." "Eldest brother. Second brother told me that Tian Yun came up with a plan for us to play such an empty fort strategy. Is it true? What do you mean by leading the Zhangzhou emperor to our door and then fighting behind closed doors?" The third city lord roared with a face full of shock and anger. "What about now? Who's fighting who now? Eldest brother, you're muddle-headed. Aren't you asking for trouble? Shut up." Mu Jinghong's face turned red after being yelled at by his third brother. He looked completely embarrassed. He really did not expect that he, Mu Jinghong, would be so miserable one day. Not to mention that his wife and children ran away with the money. Now even his third brother, who had always been simple and honest, came to question him loudly. It made him feel like he was in an awkward situation. A fire was reflected on the screen wall. Now it seemed that the entire city of shadows had fallen into a sea of red fire. Mu Xiaoxue nervously held the handkerchief in her hand, lowered her head and sobbed. She was too scared. She did not expect that someone would bring thousands of troops to the city of shadows. If she had known this, she would not have fled back to the city of shadows with her father in a panic. She should have hidden in Long Yen and Changle Villa in the capital. Maybe there would have been a glimmer of hope. She was still young and had a good time ahead of her. She didn't want to waste it here. Kong Yaofa acted like a flower protector as he hugged Mu Xiaoshue's shoulder and comforted her. "Don't worry, little sister Xiaoxue. It's not the end yet. If worse comes to worst, we can use the teleportation glyph array to escape from this place." Gu Yixuan couldn't help but sneer behind his back. "Young Master Kong is really promising. The battle hasn't even started, and you're already thinking of running away." Kong Yaofa cast a sidelong glance behind him. "What do you think, young Master Gu?" Gu Yixuan naturally couldn't have any wise ideas. Now that the city of shadows was on fire and the city was under siege, the situation couldn't get any worse. However, when he saw Kong Yaofa's pretentious look, he couldn't help but get angry. "Second brother, follow the original plan and bring people to the Eagle City's entrance to ambush them." The entrance of Eagle City was a natural opening. As long as the right amount of manpower was deployed, they would definitely be able to catch the enemy off guard. The third city lord could not help but stomp his feet again. "Big brother, what are you thinking? Aren't you sending second brother to his death? How many firearms have the enemy thrown out so far? Do you know how many firearms he still has on him? Although many people can hide at the Eagle City's entrance, we can't guarantee that the enemy is already prepared." "Shut up." Chapter 5298. Mu Jinghong roared at the third city lord, "You're still in the mood to make more trouble at this time. If you don't want to work together to resist the enemy, then get out of here." The third city lord was enraged by Mu Jinghong's roar. His eyes were wide open and his heart was burning with anger. But now everything was still under Mu Jinghong's control, so he could only watch as his second brother picked 20 disciples and walked quickly towards the entrance of Eagle City. The third city lord stomped his feet anxiously and angrily. He turned back and called his dozens of disciples to follow the second city lord in a hurry. "Second brother, how many people did they send?" The third city lord asked anxiously as he followed his second brother all the way. The second city lord was silent for a while, but he still told the truth. "It's not clear at the moment. I saw a mass of people outside the city. Then it disappeared. It should have been put away by something." The third city lord clenched his fists. "Second brother, do you think there's still room for negotiation?" The second city lord sighed deeply. "I don't think so. Third brother, you have to be mentally prepared for the worst." The third city lord was stunned when he heard this. It was self-evident what the worst psychological preparation was, that was to die on the spot. Was the situation really so serious? Hurry up and keep up. The third city lord waved his hand and led a group of disciples to the entrance of Eagle City. With a look, the crowd immediately scattered and found a hiding place to squat. They were waiting for the prey to come to them and immediately rush forward to kill. At this time, it was almost the end of the year. The cold wind was blowing and it was very cold. The crowd squatted in the hiding place in fear, as if waiting for the fierce beasts to come to them, their hands tightly clenched in cold sweat. The third city lord hid in the dark and gestured to several disciples, reminding them that when the people came in a while, they should immediately release the spirit beasts first. The crowd nodded secretly, and the bad premonition in their hearts became stronger. For some reason, they felt that tonight's battle the chances of the City of Shadows winning were close to zero. The rumbling of firearms came from the distance, and the second city lord and the third city lord's mood tightened again. "Your Majesty, the entrance to the City of Eagle is right in front of us," E1 explained concisely. "It's easy to be ambushed at the entrance." E-Air nodded. "The entrance seems to be a bottleneck. It's rather narrow, so it's not suitable to release a large number of troops here. It won't be too late to let him out after we go in." Duan Yu nodded and casually took out a handful of penetrating bone nails from his pocket and scattered them. A few intermittent screams came from the dark night. Duan Yu quickly pointed ahead. "Oh no, there really is an ambush." Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths. "Why do I feel that His Majesty is a drama queen? It's a little funny." Before they had time to speak, they saw their Majesty valiantly take the lead and fly out. Before they could catch him, he had already flown into the City of Eagle's entrance. Rong Qing and Qi Ba looked at each other and felt like crying. With such an unreliable emperor, who could they find to reason with? They had all said that there might be an ambush at the entrance, but His Majesty had rushed over first regardless of his own life. If he was so valiant, what did he need his subordinates for? E-Air and the others were taken aback, but they quickly followed after him. As they ran, they summoned their accompanying spirit beasts from the spirit beast base. At the same time, the second city lord and the third city lord had already clearly seen the newcomer. Chapter 5299. There were only a few people. When they saw the two of them, they heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly called for their subordinates to charge forward. Those disciples of the City of Shadows originally harbored the thought of fighting to the death. Now that they suddenly saw that there were only a few enemies, they were immediately overjoyed. They summoned their spirit beasts and charged forward with a roar. In the blink of an eye, Duan Yu abruptly took out a pile of glistening weapons from his inner world. Everyone was baffled for a moment. There were dozens of these weapons, including hammers, scissors, and all kinds of strange shapes. Duan Yu snapped his fingers and shouted, "Explode!" Under everyone's watchful eyes, he abruptly exploded this batch of abandoned spirit weapons. The spirit weapon's violent explosion directly sent the dozen or so disciples of the City of Shadows, who had rushed forward, flying into the sky. The light from the fire illuminated the faces of the people who were in disbelief. Duan Yu decisively released Chestnut and pointed forward. Chestnut. 8 furry tails brushed through the air, and a snow-white little fox followed his finger with a whoosh and pounced forward. It turned into the size of a small hill in a matter of minutes, and its 8 enormous tails smashed into several spirit beasts that couldn't escape in time with a rumble. In a flash, the spirit beasts were smashed into minced meat. The pitiful owners of those spirit beasts didn't even have time to move before they violently vomited a mouthful of blood, and they subsequently collapsed to the ground. Chestnut nimbly moved its limbs and dashed toward the third city lord as fast as lightning. Shocked, the third city lord barely had time to draw a defensive wall when that 8-tailed celestial fox's sharp claws abruptly tore 3 deep marks on the defensive wall. Old Third. The second city lord shouted and hastily recalled his spirit beast into the space. In front of a terrifying sacred beast, his spirit beast simply wasn't enough to fill the gaps between the 8-tailed celestial fox's teeth. Why bother summoning it and asking for trouble? Second brother, be careful. The third city lord took a deep breath and abruptly drew a long spear out of thin air. He activated his defensive spirit weapon and charged at Duan Yu. Now, there seemed to be no other choice but to fight to the death. You're courting death. The 8th young Master Qi waved his hand, and a dozen attack talismans flew out and collided with the defensive walls around the 3 city lords. Third city lord gritted his teeth and flew to Duan Yu, pointing a spear at Duan Yu's chest. Only by capturing this person would he have a chance at survival. The plan of the 3 city lords was indeed good, but unfortunately, they had underestimated the strength of the Emperor of Cangzhou. In a flash, Duan Yu's hand had already flicked away his pike, and it heavily deviated to the side. The third city lord was shocked. After all, the one in front of him was a young man in his early 20s. He didn't expect him to be so powerful. With just a flick of his finger, he was able to deflect all the energy he had accumulated all over his body. Alarm bells rang in his heart, and he was about to turn around and flee to a safe place. Suddenly, the young man in front of him moved his finger and drew out a long curved shadow. A silver flame that seemed to have no temperature was bent into the shape of a bow in his hand. The arrow on the bowstring took shape in a matter of seconds. This kind of mastery of the fire spirit made the third city lord stunned. This was impossible. No one in the world could control the fire spirit so skillfully. And, what was this pure white flame that didn't seem to have any temperature at all? Chapter 5300. The third city lord's heart trembled slightly, and he subconsciously wanted to dodge backward. Hearing the second city lord's anxious roar, the third city lord took heavy steps. Only then did he clearly feel that his entire body seemed to have been frozen in midair. He only managed to take one step before his entire body was completely frozen. 5 to 6 immobilization talismans faintly floated in midair around him. That youth had already sealed off his escape route when he made his move. The third city lord glared at that youth in astonishment. In the cold wind, under the night sky, this young monarch's expression was almost frighteningly calm. His long hair swayed slightly against the wind. His pair of resplendent and bright eyes stared fixedly at him, and his entire body was filled with a frightening aura of death. Whoosh! The demon emperor's fire transformed into a fire spirit arrow. With lightning speed, it almost arrived in front of the third city lord in a breath's time. It directly pierced through the heart of the third city lord, who was unable to move. Third brother. The second city lord's mournful scream came from behind. He staggered a step forward, barely managing to block the fierce attacks from both Crown Prince Rong and 8th young Master Qi. In the end, the second city lord couldn't withstand it, and his body abruptly fell to the ground. When he looked up, a bloody flower exploded on the third city lord's chest, and his entire body emitted bright and beautiful flames as if he was ignited by fireworks. The third city lord was ignited from head to toe like a large human-shaped mushroom, and a mushroom cloud sprayed out of his head, and then there was no end. His body was burned to charcoal by the silver-white flames. However, in the blink of an eye, he turned into a handful of ashes in that low-key flame that did not ignite, and scattered in all directions. Third brother. The second city lord cried as he sprawled on the ground with tears streaming down his face. His hateful gaze landed on Duanyu, and he looked like he couldn't wait to devour Duanyu's flesh and bones. This lofty monarch merely glanced indifferently at his third brother, who had turned into flying ashes. That glance was like looking at a small ant crawling on the ground. It was incomparably arrogant, containing supreme contempt and endless ruthlessness. The second city lord forcefully pounded the ground and staggered up from the ground. He used a black spear to support himself on the ground to prevent himself from falling. The remaining dozen or so disciples of the City of Shadows either looked pale or had fear in their eyes. They huddled around the second city lord, trembling in panic. In their eyes, the plain-clothed emperor of Zhangzhou was so handsome, but he was as dark and frightening as a ghost. Their third city lord was taken care of in one blow. With so many people present, who could be his match? No one had the strength to fight against him. They were all very clear about the strength of the third city lord. To be able to crush the third city lord like crushing an ant with just one blow, this person's strength must be above mystique venerable rank, right? Let them, a group of deity realm minions, deal with a transcendent realm mighty figure. All the disciples of the City of Shadows felt a sense of sadness in their hearts. Facing a transcendent realm expert, no matter how they struggled, they could not escape death. Everyone in the City of Shadows colluded with the Heavenly Fate dynasty to harm the compatriots of the three provinces. This crime is unforgivable and deserves 10,000 deaths. Duanyu's cold voice drifted in the dark night. He waved his hand, and a faint sneer slid across his lips. Chapter 5301. The disciples of the City of Shadows, who were originally looking at each other in a trance, involuntarily widened their eyes. Hundreds of black figures suddenly appeared behind this Zhangzhou emperor. Every second, hundreds of figures would appear from behind him. Hundreds of figures would appear one after another. They lined up in 4 rows, standing neatly behind this expressionless Zhangzhou emperor. Cold sweat dripped down from the second city lord's head. Look at this lineup. His Majesty had indeed brought thousands of people with him. Unless they had someone to help them, otherwise the foundation that the City of Shadows had built over so many years would be destroyed today. Duanyu lightly waved his hand and said indifferently, "Kill them all on the spot." Kill. Impassioned roars erupted from all around. The elites of the three provinces had been cooped up in the storage talisman for a long time. Now that they were released, their momentum was greatly boosted. The second city lord tightly gripped the black spear in his hand, and his eyes widened in shock and fury, revealing a helpless expression. My life is over today. The second city lord closed his eyes and shouted angrily, "Go." However, the numerous disciples of the City of Shadows simultaneously retreated more than a dozen steps at his command and turned to flee for their lives. The second city lord stared dumbfoundedly at this scene before him. In the blink of an eye, the elites of the three provinces had already rushed to his side. Dozens of long swords stabbed at his body. The second city lord didn't want to sit and wait for death, so he could only flee in panic. He was in dire straits as he resisted everyone's pursuit. Those dozen or so disciples of the City of Shadows didn't manage to escape far before they were all slaughtered by the elites of the three provinces who surged forward like a tidal wave. Their speed was so fast that it left people speechless. Everyone was clearly a God realm expert, but under the siege of the elites of the three provinces, the dozen or so disciples of the City of Shadows had no power to resist. Waves of bird cries came from the sky. Duanyu expressionlessly looked up. He saw a dense mass of fine-necked, eagle-bodied beasts rapidly moving over along the dark horizon. Duanyu was already prepared and raised his hand slightly. Dozens of spirit stone cannons were pushed out. The muzzles of the cannons were aimed at the sky in an orderly manner. Then, a series of loud rumbling sounds rang out. The spirit stones were thrown in handfuls after handfuls, and the sound of the cannon rumbled. A certain emperor did not care about the consumption at all and kept waving his hand to let the people behind push the spirit stone cannon forward to fill the position. After the first round of bombardment was over, when the spirit stones were loaded, he had the people behind him take over and continue bombarding. The unlucky eagle beasts were still struggling in the air when they were bombarded by the cannons, unable to descend. Unable to go up or down, it was as if they had deliberately flown here to seek death. They were bombarded by more than 20 spirit stone cannons from the front and back, causing them to fall from the sky one after another. The elites of the three prefectures had originally been divided into 300 small teams. Each team consisted of 100 people, and each team took turns to defend a direction. Seeing that something was about to fall, he disregarded everything and hacked the old master to death with a flurry of blades. That pitiful harpy was directly chopped into pieces in a matter of minutes, unable to be pieced back together. Tisk, tsk. Your Majesty of Tsangzhou, you are truly ruthless. A faint teasing voice was heard. Everyone looked over with vigilant gazes. They saw several figures floating down from the sky above where the eagle beasts were gathered. Dugu Ling, who was dressed in a red robe with a girdle, chuckled softly as he opened the ink-colored folding fan in his hand with a whoosh. Chapter 5302. Sir Dugu looked at the crowd below with a grin. What should we do? So many elites from the three provinces have gathered. It's clear that they want to uproot the City of Shadows. Although the City of Shadows transcends the three provinces, it has always lived in seclusion. I truly didn't expect that it would usher in such a bloody calamity today. Ayayaya, if word gets out that the three provinces have gathered so many people to oppress and threaten a reclusive clan like the City of Shadows, their reputation won't be good. Duan Yu expressionlessly said, tell them who you are. Kill the heavenly fate. Kill the heavenly fate. Kill the heavenly fate. 30,000 voices rang out in unison under the starry sky. Their voices traveled far and wide, causing Mu Xiaoxue, who was already mentally weak from fright, to shrink into a ball in a panic. Kong Yaofa's expression shifted. How many people have come? Judging from this momentum, there were probably more than 10,000 people. The fan in Dugu Ling's hand nearly dropped. He speechlessly smacked his lips and pitifully glanced at Duan Yu. Your Majesty probably didn't come up with this name, right? Kill the heavenly fate, kill the heavenly fate. What a melodramatic and stupid name. Rong Qing stepped forward and very politely nodded. May I know who this is? Dugu Ling also very politely replied, this one is the Hall Master of the Star-Picking Hall, Dugu Ling, Hall Master Dugu. The name, Kill the Heavenly Fate, was given by our Crown Princess of the Divine Province. Vassal Prince Rong pointed at the horizon and cupped his hands in apology. Please forgive me for my rudeness, Hall Master. Duan Yu speechlessly twitched his mouth. Why did it feel like this brother of his was a bit retarded? Sometimes Dugu Ling was also speechless. As expected, only the little Crown Princess could come up with such a simple, straightforward, and murderous name. Sigh, what a cold-blooded, heartless, and vexing little thing. Dugu Ling pitifully blinked. Can I see her? Rong Qing shook her head. You can't see her, and she also won't see you. We are people from two different worlds. Our organizations are different, our goals are different, and our missions are also different. I hope you won't have any more improper thoughts. Duan Yu, 8th young Master Qi held back his laughter and coughed lightly to interrupt Rong. Rong, now is not the time to reason with them. Then, he cupped his hands at Dugu Ling and felt that his actions were a little foolish. Both sides were enemies, what was the point of arching? She had been with second young Master K for so long that her behavior was starting to resemble him. Hall Master Dugu, you've brought so many eagle beasts here today. It's obvious that you're here to support the City of Shadows. Dugu Ling said innocently, what if I insist that I'm just passing by? A soldier suddenly jumped out, raised his saber, and shouted angrily, "Kill, kill, kill. Even if they're just passing by, we'll kill them." Duan Yu was taken aback. He didn't expect a soldier to suddenly jump out from behind him. Several voices were heard in unison. "That's right. The Crown Princess has given the order to kill members of the Tianyun group. He would definitely slaughter everyone in the Heavenly Fate realm. It didn't matter if it was just a passerby, even if it was just a chicken raised by All Seer's family. We can't let him go either. Kill. 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 Slaughter all the animals of the Tianyun group. Kill all the dog heads of the Tianyun group. Long live the Crown Princess. Eternally immortal." Duan Yu, Dugu Ling's mouth twitched. Just how much did the little Crown Princess have against them? Look at how she had educated a bunch of hot-headed subordinates. Done. Chapter 5303. The young Crown Prince Consort would live on for all eternity. Dugu Ling's face darkened amidst the drum-like chants. This blind worship was simply comical. It was clearly an extremely infuriating matter, but why did it seem a bit funny now? You have to maintain your rationality. Hall Master Dugu cried out pitifully. He blinked his eyes and looked at the group of soldiers on the left and the group of soldiers on the right. You can't overly blindly worship little Crown Princess. Dugu Ling mused what kind of bewitching potion this imp fed the soldiers to make them worship her like this. He reckoned that it really was little Crown Princess who used her identity as a pill alchemist to obtain many pills that could allow people to advance quickly and safely. So these soldiers from the 3 provinces had all become the little Stoics' die-hard fans without any surprise. It had to be said that Sir Dugu's brain turned rather quickly and guessed the crux of the matter. The Jewel Sky's Jade Dragon pills that little Crown Princess distributed had indeed won her a group of loyal die-hard fans. Regardless of whether they were from the Divine Province or not, they were extremely jubilant when they called her Crown Princess. "Everyone, don't listen to this guy's nonsense. Kill him," a soldier yelled furiously, and everyone shouted in unison. The crowd's fervent enthusiasm scared Hall Master Dugu into repeatedly retreating, aggrieved and pitiful. You guys, don't be so agitated." Hall Master Dugu stretched out his hands and pressed them down, making a "please be quiet" gesture. Duan Yu glanced at him and suddenly chuckled. There's no use stalling for time. Dugu Ling's expression flickered, and he couldn't help but inwardly praise. Sigh, any little tricks were truly useless in front of smart people. I heard that the City of Shadows has an incredible city-guarding treasure. It's called Fire Glazed Glass. It's divided into levels 1 to 9. Duan Yu curled his lips and looked meaningfully at Dugu Ling. Mu Jinghong is plotting something. Dugu Ling couldn't help but inwardly admire him. It was said that the rulers of the 3 provinces weren't easy to deal with. This Zhangzhou emperor thought for a moment and connected the dots to the fire-glazed glass. He didn't need anyone to point it out. Dugu Ling couldn't help but admire his brain. Take a guess. Dugu Ling had no choice but to continue delaying. Mu Jinghong said that he would need about an hour to set it up. As for how to set it up, he had no idea. In the end, he was not familiar with the terrain here. Everything depended on what City Lord Mu did. I'm guessing that old geezer Mu Jinghong will risk his life and abandon this city in a futile attempt to bury us here. Duan Yu couldn't help but snicker. Will that work? I don't know. Dugu Ling exchanged glances with him, then suddenly took a step back. A silver flame streaked across the sky and landed on Dugu Ling's back with a swoosh. The burning flame soared into the sky. The 2 disciples behind Dugu Ling couldn't dodge in time and were set on fire. They screamed and fell from the sky. She threw herself onto the ground and rolled several times before hastily reaching Duan Yu. Crown Prince Rong pursed his lips tightly as if he was facing a great enemy. He raised his hand and hundreds of soldiers rushed forward. They drew their swords and slashed down in a flurry, killing the two unlucky fellows on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere, and the second city lord's heart was filled with iciness. Dugu Ling dodged very quickly and disappeared into the pack of harpies in the blink of an eye. He quickly shifted to the back. Hall Master Dugu. Chapter 5304. The second city lord couldn't help but panic and hurriedly shouted. He was currently surrounded by the soldiers of the three provinces, so he had basically fallen into the enemy's hands. If it weren't for Hall Master Dugu's help, he definitely wouldn't have ended well today. Therefore, when he saw Dugu Ling planning to slip away, he was very anxious and couldn't help shouting. In fact, Dugu Ling had already seen the second city lord being besieged. Given the current situation, it was absolutely impossible to rescue the second city lord. Moreover, Mu Jinghong just called him over to buy some time and didn't ask him to help the second city lord escape. Since that was the case, he didn't need to meddle in other people's business. The second city lord watched Dugu Ling swagger away, and he was both anxious and angry. He quickly turned to look. Only to see the flood-like iron guards of the three states surrounding him, there was nothing he could do. The second city lord was instantly disheartened. He threw away the black spear in his hand and simply allowed himself to be captured. Everyone tied him up and brought him to Duanyu. Ing kicked the second city lord's leg, causing him to kneel on the ground with a plop. Although the second city lord was resentful, he was naturally very helpless when his life fell into someone else's hands. Did you see that? Duanyu curled his lips at him and said with a spurious smile, "The city of shadows you believe in will only consign you to eternal damnation in the end. You think the first city lord will send people to save you? They didn't come to save you. They're just stalling for time." The second city lord straightened his neck and said coldly, "Kill me or torture me as you wish. Since I've already fallen into your hands, I'll be at your disposal. Of course I will punish you." Duanyu nodded. "Do you think you're a good person? You helped Mu Jinghong cooperate with the Heavenly Fate dynasty and secretly harmed countless innocent people. We're only enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens by executing you." The second city lord's eyes revealed substantial murderous intent and anger. He raised his head to glare at Duanyu and roared, "The winner takes all. I have nothing to say. Zhua Yan of the City of Shadows requests an audience with His Majesty of Cangzhou." As he spoke, a clear voice attracted everyone's attention. He saw a few soldiers pushing a tied-up middle-aged woman forward, along with two young men and a young woman. It was none other than Zhua Yan and her two children who had packed up some valuables and fled in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, although they moved quickly, they didn't know that all the entrances and exits outside the City of Shadows had already been blocked by Duanyu's people. Long Yun's prediction was not wrong. Duanyu had indeed brought more than 30,000 troops. This guy still had a trick up his sleeve. He placed them in the periphery of the city to capture those fish that escaped the net. In the middle of the night, he had caught 3 big fish. It could be said that he had a bountiful harvest. "Your Majesty, I, Zhua Yan, can swear to the heavens that my son and I will never participate in the heavenly fate. I know nothing about what my husband has done." Zhua Yan said in a deep voice. "If I'm lying, I'm willing to be killed by the heavenly Tao." Duanyu raised a brow as he indifferently swept a glance at the 3 people before him. Mu Fei Xia anxiously called out, "Mother." Zhua Yan turned to look at her daughter, indicating for her to shut up. She raised her head to swear to the heavens and straightforwardly bit out a mouthful of blood to swear a heavenly Tao blood oath. A streak of blood flashed across the horizon, indicating that the oath had been completed. Zhua Yan looked at Duanyu with a face full of rage. "I already knew that Mu Jinghong would be killed by that mistress outside." Chapter 5305. That Mu Qingya really had some tricks up her sleeve. She was just a housewife, yet she was able to bewitch her husband with her tricks. Of course, Mu Jinghong also wanted to take revenge on the Mu family, so he got involved with that woman. But they had been together for so long, but Zhuo Yan never expected that Mu Jinghong, a harsh and ungrateful man, would actually have feelings for Mu Qingyao. Mu Jinghong had fallen in love with that mistress. That was why she was fooled by the soaring heavens hall's hall master. She was completely used. Not only did he bring disaster to the entire city of shadows, but he also brought disaster to the three of them. When Zhuo Yan thought of this, she gnashed her teeth in hatred. If Mu Qingyao was in front of her at this time, she would have rushed forward and torn this vicious woman apart without saying a word. I was right. I found out before that he had a close relationship with that mistress, as if he was planning something. Zhuo Yan gritted her teeth. I didn't expect that Mu Jinghong would be so brainless. He actually believed the words of that mistress and really led so many people in the City of Shadows to join Tianyun. When Mu Jinghong joined, he didn't ask for my opinion at all, nor did he ask for the opinion of his children. He didn't care about anything and sold all of our lives. Zhuo Yan was so sad that she wanted to cry out loud. The three of us added together can't even compare to that bitch Mu in his heart. Zhuo Yan suddenly laughed wildly. In that case, when disaster strikes, everyone flies away. I naturally won't care about his life or death. I didn't expect that your majesty would catch me red-handed when I escaped from the City of Shadows with my 2 children. Your majesty, I can tell you everything about Mu Jinghong. Zhuo Yan took a deep breath and pleaded, I can also tell you the approximate location of all the assets he buried underground. I just want you to promise me one thing, your majesty. Let my children go. Even if you want my life, it doesn't matter. Mother. Mu Feixia and Mu Yuanying hurriedly called out. Mother, if you don't leave, we won't leave either. Mother, we'll leave together. Mu Yuanying and Mu Feixia were tied together. They were so anxious that they were sweating profusely. Zhuo Yan glanced at her children. Don't worry about Mother. Mother has lived for so long, I can see through everything. Mother only wants the 2 of you to be well. Duan Yu looked at the 3 of them before his gaze landed on Zhuo Yan's pale face. For a moment, his gaze was a bit absent-minded. Son, I don't have any other requests. Mother only wants you to be happy. It would be even better if you could bring a daughter-in-law back to Mother. Your Majesty. Crown Prince Rong immediately noticed that His Majesty was in a daze. He quickly reached out and tugged at his sleeves. Duan Yu returned to his senses in a daze and said with a slight nod, in that case, before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly heard a soldier in front of him shouting, Who's there? More than a dozen people with sluggish footsteps and tilted heads walked out of the City of Eagles and approached the entrance step by step. Their movements were very sluggish, and they seemed to be walking with great difficulty. Zhuo Yan's expression abruptly changed when she saw these sluggish zombies. She hastily said, Your Majesty must be careful. Chapter 5306. These zombies might have fire glass buried in their bodies. Mu Jinghong probably wants to make these zombies detonate the fire glass effortlessly and perish together with us. The surrounding soldiers' expressions changed when they heard this, and they surged to Duan Yu's side like a tide. They were fearless and had to block the fire glass even if they had to act as human flesh walls. Protect His Majesty. Duan Yu smiled faintly, but his expression remained indifferent as he said, No need to be nervous. With us here, no firearms can harm us. Rong Qing immediately tensed up when he heard this, and he hastily reached out to grab his willful emperor. He knew this guy too well. If there was any danger, he would rely on his skill and boldness to take the lead and leave all his subordinates behind. However, just as he reached out, he saw His Majesty leaping into the air as expected. With a flash step, everyone felt their vision blur. They saw a dagger glowing with purple light in his hand, and he had already teleported from their midst to the group of corpse puppets. 8th young Master Qi's heart nearly stopped from fright, and his face paled instantly. Rong Qing even leaped up, wanting to chase after Duan Yu. Unexpectedly, he crashed into a defensive wall with a thump, and a bump formed on his head. He was directly bounced back by a force and fell to the ground. Heavens! Rong Qing's handsome face darkened, and he abruptly turned back to glare at Duan Yu's back. This guy was truly incomparably deceitful. He actually added a defensive wall around them to prevent them from following. Zhuyan's face changed color when she saw this, and she anxiously shouted, "Hurry and help. How can he withstand it alone? There are more than a dozen zombies here, so there might be more than a dozen fire glass." Previously, the City of Shadows used 3 ninth-grade fire glass to annihilate a small city and killed more than 1,000 cultivators. This is not a joke. This fire glass is extremely powerful, Zhuyan said anxiously. There might be about 20 pieces of grade 9 flame glass in the entire Shadow City. I'm guessing that there might be fire glass buried in each of these zombies. Boom. A soaring flame instantly interrupted Zhuyan's chatter. Everyone felt that the ground was shaking slightly. Everyone couldn't help but sway left and right along with the shaking of the ground. Rong Qing's darkened face turned ashen. She squeezed through a group of soldiers from the 3 continents and charged forward with all her might. However, he was still blocked by the defensive wall in front of him. Fuck! Who could break the defensive barrier set up by a transcendent god? There was a burst of fire outside, and it was impossible to see what was happening. Rong Qing's heart sank as she roared, "What the fuck are you all doing? Hurry up and work together to break this barrier. Nothing must happen to their willful emperor." Just as everyone was bashing at Duan Yu's defensive wall like headless flies, they heard Wuxia exclaim, "Everyone, don't be impatient. Quickly look." Everyone hurriedly turned their heads, and when they saw who it was, their jaws almost fell to the ground. They saw an 8-tailed celestial fox as large as a snowy mountain in the air, swinging its 8 tails left and right as if it was whipping a toy. It sent those crooked zombies flying one by one. Their willful emperor was currently standing on the 8-tailed celestial fox's back, playing with a transparent glass bead in her hand. Completely unharmed. Rong Qing breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 5307. 8th Young Master Qi was taken aback and couldn't resist covering his face. Heir presumptive, quickly look. Did His Majesty snatch the fire glass from those zombies? Heir Rong nodded expressionlessly. You're right. Damn, this bizarre His Majesty's actions were truly comical. Those pitiful zombies didn't even have the time to ignite the fire glass before it was snatched away. His Majesty truly deserved to be their family's willful His Majesty to even snatch things from corpses. So dirty. It was unlucky to have been touched by those disgusting zombies. Duan Yu grumbled inwardly as he tossed a handful of colored glass beads into the air. He waved his hand to release a circle of silver flames that enveloped the beads. However, after a short while, he raised his hand and wiped away the flames on the glass bead. Everyone could see very clearly through the barrier. Those originally transparent colored glass beads were now emitting a faint golden glow. Each bead was round and bright, practically reflecting a person's reflection. The city lord's wife, Zhuyan, who was originally worried, silently shut her mouth. Her voice was a bit dry as she said, "His Majesty's actions are truly beyond our expectations." Could it be that he had smelted the fire-glazed glass again with his bare hands? From the looks of it, this firearm seemed to be even more resplendent and dazzling after being refined again. Its power was probably far greater than before. Heir Rong and the others involuntarily chuckled. They really wanted to tell this Madame Mu that she wasn't the only one with this idea. They also felt that this His Majesty's actions were rather out of line. Duan Yu took out a box and tossed all the colored glass beads inside. That not-so-gentle technique made the onlookers tremble in fear. He was truly the ancestor of playing with fire. He wasn't worried that these things would explode in his hands. After doing all this, Duan Yu tossed the box back into his inner world and leaped into the midst of the zombies. He raised his hand and used the purple shadow dagger to knock on the head of one of the zombies. In a split second, everyone watched as the group of zombies surrounding him suddenly disintegrated into fine powder and dissipated with the wind. Duan Yu stood in the midst of the dispersing powder and looked over indifferently. Due to the airflow around his body, the scattered dust didn't touch his body at all. From the beginning to the end, he was very calm and collected, as if he hadn't killed more than a dozen corpse puppets and resolved the crisis of the fire-glazed glass. The mouths of Zhuo Yan and the others immediately opened wide. For a moment, they did not know what to say. Heaven and earth could bear witness that this was the first time they had seen someone use the strength of one hand to turn a group of corpse puppets into ashes. The worst thing was that a powerful firearm like the fire-glazed glass was like a toy in his hands. He could do whatever he wanted with it. A trace of bitterness once again surfaced in Zhuo Yan's heart as she shook her head speechlessly. What kind of powerful enemy did the City of Shadows provoke? Mu Jinghong was too confident in herself. Little did they know that the world had long since belonged to those astonishingly talented young people. Duan Yu removed the defensive barrier and waved his hand. His gaze landed on Zhuo Yan, and his lips curled into a faint smile. Madam Mu, please. Zhuo Yan's heart relaxed slightly. She was very clear that this meant that His Majesty had accepted her surrender and was willing to spare her children. She couldn't help but rejoice in her heart. If she hadn't made the prompt decision to swear the heavenly Tao blood oath, who knew how long she would have to explain before the other party would believe her. Chapter 5308. Thank goodness, everything did not turn for the worse. Zhuo Yan nodded lightly in Duan Yu's direction. She bowed respectfully and formally. Please follow me. Duan Yu nodded and turned to instruct Rong Qing before transferring 1,000 people to follow Zhuo Yan. Rong turned to instruct the members of the Heavenly Fate Army, everyone, put on your special defensive spirit clothing and follow me in. We will exterminate all the zombies in the city. In an instant, the sounds of battle shook the heavens and earth. Tens of thousands of soldiers and horses followed Crown Prince Rong's group. Under the guidance of Yi and the others, they all lined up and entered the City of Eagles. At the same time, Mu Jinghong led the remaining disciples into Eagle City's underground passageway and sent people up to scout for information. Mu Xiaoxue nervously twisted her handkerchief and hesitated for a long time before asking timidly, "Father, should we leave this place in advance?" Mu Jinghong angrily paced back and forth. How could he be in the mood to pacify his nervous daughter? He grumpily reprimanded, "We haven't even cleared out the items in the treasury yet, and we're leaving now. Are you going to hand over the foundation of the City of Shadows that we have built for so many years to someone else? But the situation outside is so grim. If we don't leave earlier," Mu Xiaoxue sobbed and choked on her words. Mu Jinghong impatiently waved his hand. "Enough, don't say any more." This daughter was truly useless. She only knew how to sob whenever she encountered a problem. What else could she do? She did not have the slightest ability to share his burden. Seeing Mu Xiaoxue crying pitifully, Kang Yaofa quickly hugged her shoulders and softly comforted her, "Younger sister Xiaoxue, don't worry too much. It should be fine. I also brought more than 300 people with me, so we can hold them off for a while. As long as City Lord Mu cleans up most of the things in the treasury, we will be able to leave. Don't worry, younger sister Xiaoxue, I will protect you even if I have to risk my life." Mu Xiaoxue nodded gratefully at Kang Yaofa and smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Brother Kang." She twisted the handkerchief in her hand as she stood on the side and watched her old father pacing back and forth in the passageway. Her heart was also in turmoil. Weren't the things in the vault just worldly possessions? At a time like this, her father still wanted money more than his own life. He insisted on collecting all the money and didn't cherish his daughter's life. Judging from her father's expression just now, he seemed to be complaining about her for not being able to help at all. At the thought of this, Mu Xiaoxue felt frustrated again. Mu Jinghong paced for a while and then heard a flurry of footsteps. 2 disciples limped over, dragging their broken limbs. Their faces were covered in blood, and their faces were filled with panic. When they saw him, they hurriedly went forward and cried, "City Lord! City Lord!" When Mu Jinghong saw her weeping appearance, he was filled with anger. What happened? Mu Jinghong scolded in a deep voice. His face immediately became gloomy, and his eyes revealed traces of cold light. The 2 disciples didn't dare to hide anything and cried out, "City Lord, Madam, eldest young master, and eldest young miss brought His Majesty and his people to the underground vault and killed many of our brothers." What? Mu Jinghong only felt his vision turn black. His footsteps were a little unstable, and his entire person was a little dizzy. That woman, she actually dared to do this? Chapter 5309. Good Jueyan, good Mu Feixia, good Mu Yuanying. Mu Jinghong's eyes were filled with ferocious killing intent. He was on the verge of exploding with rage. "City Lord, let's leave quickly. There are too many of them. There are tens of thousands of them." The 2 disciples continued to cry, "We can't beat them. We can't beat them." One of the disciples cried as he crawled towards Mu Jinghong's feet. He cried out mournfully, "City Lord, the situation has changed. Now there is fire everywhere. The entire city has been engulfed in flames. Under the leadership of Madam, they dug up all the treasures in the treasury and took everything away. Even some of the treasures that we had painstakingly stored in our inner world and spiritual weapons were all forced to hand over." Mu Jinghong's vision turned black and he felt a little lightheaded. A trace of a smile flashed across the eyes of the crying guard who was crawling on the ground. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly rose up. Under the stunned gaze of everyone, he raised the dagger in his hand and stabbed it into Mu Jinghong's stomach. Mu Jinghong was not on guard at all. After being stabbed and stabbed, he twisted the dagger clockwise. He only felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He looked down and saw that his stomach had been cut open and his intestines had been cut open. The guard who launched the sneak attack was quick and swift, and he ran away smoothly. After he succeeded in his attack, he quickly retreated and flew away with a flip of his body. In the next moment, he had inexplicably appeared hundreds of feet away. He immediately escaped through the tunnel. Another guard crawled back a few steps. Just as he was about to get up and slip away, he was killed on the spot by several disciples of the City of Shadows who reacted in time. Blood flowed all over the ground. Mu Jinghong was helped to sit down. He pressed his abdomen with one hand. He was in so much pain that big beads of sweat appeared on his head. Mu Xiaoxue was so panicked that she almost fainted. She cried at the side and cried mournfully, "Father, father, father. Good plan." Mu Jinghong's forehead was full of cold sweat. He stretched out his hand to cover the wound on his abdomen and gritted his teeth. "City Lord, City Lord." Gu Yixuan hurriedly took the opportunity to step forward to show his loyalty. He took out the healing medicine from his inner world and handed it to Mu Jinghong. "City Lord, please take this hemostatic pill first." Mu Jinghong opened her mouth and swallowed it. Her face became very pale because of the loss of blood. Wasn't he the emperor of Tsang Prefecture? How could their methods be so despicable? They had captured a disciple from the City of Shadows and sent him to lead the way. Then, when he was unprepared, he got the fake attendants of the City of Shadows to stab him viciously. Mu Jinghong glared angrily at the disciple who had led the way, who was already dead on the ground. With a wave of his hand, he sent out a ball of divine power at the disciple, crushing his bones and scattering his ashes. Mu Xiaoxue shuddered and shrank away from Kong Yaofa. Kong Yaofa was very happy. He hugged Mu Xiaoxue's slender waist and comforted her softly, don't worry about little sister Xiaoxue. Kong Yaofa looked up at Mu Jinghong and said in a deep voice, Uncle Mu, now that our location has been exposed, I reckon that soon, that group of despicable and shameless people will take advantage of the victory to chase after us. The most important thing now is that we don't care about anything and quickly get out of here. Mu Jinghong was naturally very unwilling. He even hated the new master of the River of Forgetfulness, Long Yun. Chapter 53:10. He also bore a grudge against the second young master of the Tianyun family. These two had probably already received the news that His Majesty of the Tsang Prefecture was going to send troops to attack the entire City of Shadows. However, these two had nothing to do with it and only came to inform him at noon that the Tsang Prefecture had sent troops to approach. He had no time to prepare and transfer his assets. Therefore, he could only pick up the important things in this underground vault and stuff them all in his inner world. He had asked people to take the few storage spiritual weapons and hurriedly went to the vault to pack some things. In the end, he was intercepted midway. Now that he thought of the materials in his underground vault and the dozen or so pieces of level 9 fire glass he had stored there, he felt very uncomfortable. He could only blame himself for having too few storage spiritual weapons on him. His inner world was only about 5 cubic meters, so he couldn't stuff many things. What a pity, the things he had collected over the years were all gone one day and benefited others. He really couldn't accept it. Father. Mu Xiaoxue saw that he had been beating his chest and stamping his feet for a long time without saying a word. She couldn't help but call out, Father. In the current situation, she had to leave whether she wanted to or not. Was she really going to stay here and wait for death? Fight with others head on? She was still young and hadn't found a suitable husband to marry. Naturally, she didn't intend to die. Mu Xiaoxue thought so and couldn't help but urge again, Father, let's go. Go, do you think I don't want to go? Mu Jinghong shouted angrily. Suddenly, she vented all her anger. Isn't it all because of the stupid things you did? Everyone in the City of Shadows has to suffer because of you. Mu Xiaoxue's eyes widened in an instant, and her face was full of disbelief. Father actually blamed her. And on such an occasion, in front of so many people, he reprimanded her without giving her any face. Mu Xiaoxue immediately cried out, covering her small mouth with a handkerchief and sobbing softly. Gu Yishuan was so distressed that his eyes turned red. Just as he was about to walk forward, he saw that damn fat pig hugging his beloved junior sister with his pig hands and gently comforting her, Sister Xiaoxue, don't cry. When there was nothing to do, Mu Jinghong was reluctant to raise her voice in front of such a delicate and weak daughter. But now, at this moment of life and death, he was so angry that he was half dead. How could he have the mood to care about his daughter's feelings? Immediately, he complained, if it weren't for you, who foolishly provoked the crown princess of the divine land and made me have to expose my identity and save you, I wouldn't have been so stupid. How did such a thing happen? Do you know? The Emperor of Tsang Prefecture mobilized all the elite troops above the God realm in the 3 prefectures. Mu Jinghong rebuked angrily. If you weren't brainless, how could such a thing happen? As he spoke, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He hurriedly pressed it with his hand as he sucked in a breath of cold air. His internal organs were damaged, so it was natural for him to feel pain. However, where did that chill come from? Could it be that the person who injured him had smeared some sort of cold poison on his dagger? Just as he was thinking, a loud rumble came from the entrance of the passageway. It was as if someone had forcefully removed the invisible door at the entrance of the passageway. A gust of cold wind blew in from the outside, causing everyone to shiver uncontrollably. City Lord Mu, long time no see. Chapter 53:11. Duanyu entered the passageway with a smile that was like a spring breeze caressing one's face. Mu Xiaoxue twisted a handkerchief as her panicked gaze lingered on Duanyu several times. It couldn't be helped. This Tsang Prefecture's young monarch was truly handsome and outstanding, making people want to take a few more glances. Unfortunately, the other party only glanced at her without any change in expression before turning to her father, Mu Jinghong. Mu Xiaoxue tightened her grip on the handkerchief. However, Mu Jinghong quickly stood up and threw out a stairway talisman without a second word. He angrily shouted, "Let's go." They watched as the group disappeared with a whoosh. Duan Yu couldn't resist blinking and turned to tell Rong Qing, inform that swindler that they've gone back again. Vassal Prince Rong couldn't resist twitching his mouth as he muttered inwardly, "You keep calling the crown prince of the divine province a swindler, but you yourself are also a complete swindler." This stairway talisman was extremely interesting. Not only could it teleport a long distance, but it could also set a fixed return point. His swindler majesty had already calculated that once this old city lord used the stairway talisman, the fixed return point would most likely be the City of Shadows or the imperial capital's Longyan. After all, he had brought Mu Xiaoxue from the imperial capital's Longyan to the City of Shadows headquarters in a flash last time. Now that he was on the brink of death, he definitely wouldn't hesitate to head to the fixed transfer point. Otherwise, how could he shake them off in the shortest time possible? At this moment, Mu Jinghong's group was ascending the stairway talisman and leaving through the air. Just as Duan Yu predicted, they directly set a fixed return point to the imperial capital's Longyan. Unfortunately, just as they arrived at Longyan City, they barely managed to catch their breath. They were startled by an angry shout of "Here!" The sound of hurried and orderly footsteps fell heavily on everyone's hearts. Mu Jinghong covered her bleeding abdomen with one hand and turned her head back with a horrified expression. His heart couldn't help but skip a beat. A troop of armored soldiers wielding sabers and swords appeared at the entrance of the alley. The leader was dressed in a black robe and had his hair tied up by a jade crown. He smiled at him. "We meet again, City Lord Mu. I trust you have been well since we last met." Mu Jinghong was extremely shocked. She covered the wound on her abdomen and unexpectedly took 2 steps back. Mu Xiaoxue was so scared that her face turned pale. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly and looked at the man in front of her. The crown prince of the divine land led a team and stood at the entrance of the alley with a smile on his face. Handsome and spirited, like pine and jade. However, it was this peerlessly beautiful man who stared at them with eyes as cold as a ferocious beast from hell. There was no trace of warmth in his eyes at all. There was only mockery and ridicule. "You. All of you. You guys schemed against me." Mu Jinghong finally understood. These two actually joined hands to trap him. He looked down at the stairway talisman in his hand and rubbed it hard. "Don't run, City Lord Mu." Prince Mo smiled and said, "The talisman energy on the stairway talisman can only be transferred once in a short period of time. You can't run now. There's no need to try again, City Lord Mu." Ha, ha ha. The red marks in Mu Jinghong's eyes were about to shatter. "I really didn't expect this." He looked coldly at Prince Mo and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty of Tsangzhou, Crown Prince of the Divine Land, you two actually joined hands to scheme against me." Chapter 53:12. I'm really flattered. Mu Jinghong covered the wound on his stomach and glared at Mo Lien with gritted teeth. "How did you happen to appear here?" Mu Jinghong was puzzled. After all, although he used the stairway talisman to come to Longyan, the capital. But the place where he appeared, such as the narrow alley in front of him, was not a predetermined place. The stairway talisman's directional location was not so accurate. He only went to a large area. Although it was set in Longyan City, he could have stopped in any direction. But why did Prince Mo appear here immediately? Don't you know? Prince Mo asked in surprise. Longyan City's city defense array was activated a few months ago. This great city barrier formation can effectively defend against enemies from the outside. That's not the most important thing. What's important is that it has an extraordinary function. Mo Lien smiled faintly and stared at Mu Jinghong's wonderful old face. She said with a smile, "As long as I'm in this city, I can go anywhere with the array disc." Of course, he would not explain very clearly why he discovered Mu Jinghong and the others at the first moment and why he came in such a timely manner. That was because the entire Long Yen city was filled with demonic eyes that could see through everything. Once Mu Jinghong and the others appeared, Jojo would immediately receive the exact location information. Little Tree Chochio did not mind those eyes that covered the sky and made people's hair stand on end. After all, these eyes were indeed useful. Impossible. Then how did you discover us at the first moment? Mu Jinghong was conflicted about this question. But it was impossible for Mo Lien to answer him. Mu Xiaoxue saw the tall and handsome man glance indifferently at the people behind him. Immediately, a tide of soldiers surged out from behind him. Without saying a word, they waved their blades and stabbed at them fiercely. Miss Mu was so frightened that her face turned pale and she screamed repeatedly. Mu Jinghong covered his wound with one hand and held his saber with the other to fight. But when he used his strength, he realized that something was wrong. Not only did he feel dizzy, but there was also a bitter chill coming from his wound. It was so cold that he couldn't help but shiver. Even the saber in his hand was almost unsteady. Damn it, what kind of cold poison did that Sangzhou guard impersonate from the City of Shadows smear on his dagger that even he couldn't withstand it? Despicable! Mu Jinghong shouted angrily. He ordered his men to come forward and attack. The Hades court guards quickly surrounded them. Their movements were swift and vigorous. Every one of them looked calm as though they were chopping vegetables and melons. In just a few moves, they killed more than half of the City of Shadows disciples who looked emaciated. Mu Jinghong and the others secretly complained in their hearts. The two from Sangzhou and the Divine Land were too vicious. This was especially true for the remaining disciples, who complained incessantly. Back in the City of Shadows, Long Yen, who had been beaten into a pulp by the Tsang Prefecture's emperor, had to flee all the way to the imperial capital with the help of the Stairway Talisman. However, as soon as they set foot on Long Yan's land, they were surrounded and killed by the Crown Prince of the Divine Province. Their lives were too bitter. It was not a normal kind of bitterness. Mu Xiaoxue shivered as she hid behind Kong Yaofa. She let Kong Yaofa hug her as they dodged countless sharp blades. But Kong Yaofa had to protect her, so he could only use one hand. In front of the well-trained Hades court guards, he could not last more than 100 moves. Chapter 53:13. After 100 moves, Kong Yaofa was at a disadvantage. He couldn't even take care of himself. One of the dark court guards swung his saber at Kong Yaofa's chest. Mu Xiaoxue cried out and pushed Kong Yaofa away. She scrambled away from Kong Yaofa's side. She couldn't see where she was going, so she knocked her head on the wall of the alley. She was so dizzy that she saw stars. Blood also seeped out of her forehead. Mu Xiaoxue was shocked and scared. She couldn't stop screaming. Gu Yishuan panicked. He shouted, "Little junior sister," and rushed forward. However, he was forced back by the Hades court guard's swords. Brother Kong, senior brother Gu. Mu Xiaoxue looked for protection with tears in her eyes. However, she saw a tall Hades court guard raising his saber and swinging it at her head. Mu Xiaoxue cried out. Her life was over. She closed her eyes and fainted just like that. When she fell, the Hades court guard couldn't stop in time and stepped on her. A crisp crack came from her calf. Mu Xiaoxue shuddered in pain. However, she didn't dare to open her eyes. She heard the sound of wind and the sound of fighting from both sides. At a time like this, Mu Jinghong and the others could only fight to the death. However, compared to the strong Hades court guards who were waiting for their prey, Mu Jinghong and the others were already exhausted from the journey. After being ambushed, more than half of the City of Shadows disciples died at the hands of the Hades court guards. The remaining few dodged left and right, resisting the attacks bitterly. Mu Jinghong was forced into a corner. 2 Hades court guards swung their swords at her. Naturally, she couldn't hold on to the saber in her hand. It fell to the ground with a clang. Mu Xiaoxue lay on the ground and pretended to be dead. She cried silently and didn't dare to open her eyes. Suddenly, she felt a gust of wind blow past her face. In the next second, a heavy corpse fell on top of her. The corpse's face was right on top of her little face. That cold nose was pressed against her face. Mu Xiaoxue's heart almost collapsed. She endured the nausea and dizziness. She opened her eyes wide in shock and saw the corpse's half-closed eyelids on her face. Mu Xiaoxue really fainted this time, completely out of fright. In the private room of the tea house across the alley, Princess Wushuang almost spat out a mouthful of tea. Princess Wushuang hurriedly took out a handkerchief and wiped her mouth. She said with a mocking expression, "My eldest brother is really mean. He actually kicked a dead person onto Miss Mu. Look at how scared Miss Mu is. Ha ha ha." Xiao Mu held the warm cup and cast a glance at the bustling alley across from her. Mu Jinghong, such a shrewd person, actually stumbled at Mu Qingya's hands. It can be said that everything has its vanquisher. If Mu Jinghong had not courted her own death, she would not have been in such a miserable state. But since he had a connection with Tian Yun, then he deserved to die. "Sister-in-law, how are you going to deal with Miss Mu?" Princess Wushuang asked excitedly. She saw that the Hades court guards did not do anything to Mu Xiaoxue. She knew that they had received orders. Her sister-in-law must have made some strange arrangements. Arbor was silent for a moment. Then, he said slowly, "If I use a blunt knife to cut that person open inch by inch, she won't feel any pain. But if I use a blunt knife to cut that person's most beloved thing inch by inch, she probably won't be able to take it," Arbor thought. Princess Wushuang suddenly shut her mouth and shuddered in her heart. Chapter 53:14. She always felt that her sister-in-law was like this. When she stared blankly into the distance, there seemed to be a dark whirlpool swirling in the depths of her eyes. This Mu Xiaoxue was going to be in big trouble. When Mu Xiaoxue woke up again, she only felt a pungent smell of blood around her. His body was weighed down heavily by the weight. She tried her best to suppress the scream in her throat, stretched out her 2 arms, and pushed away the corpse on top of her. Mu Xiaoxue gasped for breath and looked around in panic. Corpses all over the ground. She only felt dizzy and hurriedly reached out to support herself against the wall. Her legs were weak and her whole body was sore. She barely supported herself and did not fall to the ground. Mu Xiaoxue looked at the corpses with a blank expression. She did not see her father, nor did she see Kong Yaofa or Gui Xuan. Where did they all go? Was he going to abandon her just like that? Mu Xiaoxue's heart was full of anger and hatred. Just because she did not have the slightest bit of cultivation and spiritual power, she was just abandoned on the street like this? All of them had kung fu, so they were able to escape in times of crisis. Where was the man who said he would protect her with his life? He abandoned her in times of danger. Mu Xiaoxue was furious and came out of the alley in a daze. Looking at the sky, it was already late at night. She trembled as she came out of the alley. She was wearing thin clothes and had no money. In the cold winter night, it was difficult for her to move. Mu Xiaoxue was thirsty, hungry, and panicked. She ran around the street like a headless fly. The faint moonlight elongated her bleak figure. From afar, she suddenly heard neat footsteps coming from the corner of the street. Mu Xiaoxue shrank back in fear and hid under a stall by the roadside. She saw a group of people running over, holding burning torches. They pointed to the front and asked, "Did you find her?" "No." "Keep looking. There is an order from above. If you catch Miss Mu Xiaoxue, you will be rewarded with 5,000 spirit coins." Mu Xiaoxue quickly covered her mouth and nose, not daring to make a sound. It wasn't until the team had run far away that she finally crawled out from under the stall like a rat crossing the street. She crawled and hid in a dark alley next to her. Little did she know that after the team passed by, someone in the team swept a glance at the place where she was hiding, and the corner of his mouth curled up mockingly. There were orders from the higher-ups to chase after Miss Mu Xiaoxue non-stop for the next 2 days. She didn't have the slightest bit of free time, running around and hiding for her life, but he just didn't catch her. He kept her hanging by the thread, constantly scaring her. Although they didn't understand why the higher-ups would give such an order, the soldiers just needed to do their jobs and obey the orders. 2 days later, Mu Xiaoxue, who had gone mad and was filthy and smelly, felt that she had finally escaped from the pursuing soldiers after going through all kinds of hardships and dangers. With her intelligence and wit, she returned to Changle Villa, which she had not seen for a long time, with tears streaming down her face. This Changle courtyard was where the second young master had imprisoned her mother. She used to hate him, but now, she loved him as much as she loved him. As long as she could find the organization, she would be able to get out of her current predicament. She had been hungry for at least 3 days, thirsty and hungry. If she hadn't forced herself to drink some dirty water from the canal last night, she probably wouldn't have been able to hold on until she came back. Yuba, who had been following behind her, glanced at the words, Changle Villa, and then disappeared into the night. Chapter 53:15. Mu Xiaoxue flung herself against the door and pounded on it. However, the originally tightly shut door was directly pushed open by her. Mu Xiaoxue did not notice and stumbled into the suddenly opened door, knocking her head on the ground. She did not care about how painful her body was and hurriedly looked up. Changle Courtyard, which had always been brightly lit, was now dark and gloomy. Not a single person could be seen in the vicinity. Only the whistling of the wind could be heard coming from the central courtyard. It was as if ghosts were wailing and wolves were howling as it blew through the darkness. Mu Xiaoxue almost went crazy. She jumped up crazily, her slightly trembling legs fluttering as she rushed in through the door. She tripped on the threshold of the courtyard and barely managed to stabilize herself. When she rushed into the hall and found that there was no one, she rushed to the backyard and found that there was still no one. Mu Xiaoxue was completely stunned. She could only madly rush to the kitchen in the backyard, wanting to see what food was inside. However, when she stepped into the kitchen, she only saw 2 or 3 fat rats squeaking as they hopped past. She was so scared that her little face turned pale and she screamed. There was no one. Did everyone in Changle Courtyard leave? Second young master and the rest were not there. Not to mention hot soup, there was not even any leftovers in the kitchen. There was not a single grain of rice in the rice jar, half of the cold steamed bread on the stove was gone, and when she opened the pot, it was empty. There was nothing. This made Mu Xiaoxue, who had been hungry for 3 days and was dizzy, completely lose her mind. The current her did not have the slightest bit of elegance and beauty. She was like a hysterical shrew, standing in the courtyard and screaming. Mother, mother! Second young master, where did you all go? There was no one, there was no one. It was as if she was the only one left in the whole world. Helplessness, panic, and fear filled Mu Xiaoxue's heart, causing her to scream uncontrollably. Idiot, do you want to lure everyone here? Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind her. Mu Xiaoxue turned her head in surprise and joy, and with a plop, she knelt down in front of the person. Hall Master Gong, save me, Hall Master Gong. The ghost-face Hall Master stared at her with a faint light in his eyes. Hall Master Gong, please take me to see my mother, or second young master, or eldest young master would be fine too. Mu Xiaoxue was anxious to find someone to protect her, and she sobbed. I want to become stronger. I want to accept organizational restructuring. She was no longer willing to live like a rat on the street. He was chased by people all day long and wandered the streets penniless. Looking at the half-meat bun in the beggar's hand, he swallowed his saliva greedily, but did not dare to reach out to snatch it. Because she couldn't beat him at all. If she tried to snatch it, she would only be beaten up. Ghost-Face Hall Master's eyes flickered as she recalled what second young master had said. The little fellow wanted to deal with her. This vicious and merciless little thing wanted to drive him to a dead end. Song Feng, cooperate with her. The Ghost-Face Hall Master Gong Song Feng looked coldly at the weak woman prostrating at his feet, without the slightest ripple in his eyes. He reached into his pocket and took out a small black porcelain bottle, tossing it in front of her as if he was giving alms. He said indifferently, if you want to become stronger, swallow it. No one can help you, only you can help yourself. Gong Song Feng said coldly. Mu Xiaoxue prostrated herself on the ground and raised her hands with a humble expression, trembling as she took the porcelain bottle. Chapter 53:16. Arbor gazed out the window gloomily. She propped up her chin with her two small hands, and her pair of dark eyes stared at the bright starry sky in a trance. When Mo Lien finished bathing and came out, he caught sight of her impatient appearance. She walked up and looked out the window. Jojo, what are you looking at? Yuba came by just now. The little stoic propped up her chin and looked back at him. She said gloomily, Mu Xiaoxue was forced to return to the resort. I reckon she will forcefully request to accept Tianyin's transformation. After these few days of wandering and suffering accumulated to a certain degree, something inconceivable would definitely happen. Mu Qingya, I want you to be in so much pain that you wish you were dead. The Crown Prince smiled faintly and circled her waist, pulling her into his embrace. He suddenly exclaimed, Jojo, you've put on weight again. The little stoic glared at him, and her thoughts were immediately pulled back by him. The Crown Prince chuckled and lowered his head to kiss her small face. It's good that you're fat, my darling. You're even prettier when you're fat. Arbor sighed. I know you want to make me happy. But this topic was changed too abruptly. The little stoic extended a fist and knocked him. Then are you happy or not? Mo Lien gazed at her with bright eyes and pulled her over to bite her lightly. Jojo, you've been smiling at me more recently. The little stoic looked at him expressionlessly. You're dreaming, right? Mo Lien pursed his lips and pulled her over to kiss her again and again. Heartless, heartless. Feel it. You've cut a hole in my chest, and it's pouring in air. My heart hurts like hell. Arbor's original gloominess was inexplicably swept away by his disturbance. She grumpily pulled out her hand and messed up his hair, messing it up like a bird's nest. Only then did she burst out in laughter. Mo Lien's eyes lit up. She hugged her and said gently, Jojo, Jojo, hit me, hit me. Why would I hit you for no reason? Arbor glared at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. As long as you're happy. Arbor stared at him, stroked his face, put his little head against his forehead, and said softly, I forced her to the point where she couldn't escape. I forced her to go crazy. Let her go back and find a mutation pill to consume. Am I very bad? Yes, very bad. Prince Mo nodded without hesitation. Arbor glared at him again. Prince Mo smiled and pulled her closer. He pecked her lips and said in a low voice, I'm worse than you. I crippled Mu Jinghong and Gu Yishuan and threw them into the dungeon. Tomorrow, I will personally lead people to raid the entire Gu family. Don't you think I'm bad? Mischievous, just right for my Joe. We're a match made in heaven. Unparalleled in the world. Crown Prince Mo tilted his head and lightly scratched her small face. You're bad, and I'm worse. This is a perfect match. Arbor pursed her lips and couldn't hold it in. She glared at him and laughed again. Scoundrel. Isn't that right? I'm the worst in the world. With me in front to block for you, don't worry, the first bad person definitely won't be you. Arbor didn't want to bother with him anymore. He was so indecent all day and only knew how to make her happy. Did you and Duanyou secretly contact each other again? Otherwise, why would he inform Sapling in advance that Mu Jinghong was coming to Dragon Flame City so that Sapling could see more of Devil Pupil's shadow? Crown Prince Mo replied innocently, I didn't, why would I contact him? The little stoic pinched his face hard. Big liar. Chapter 53:17. How was he a big swindler? Prince Mo gazed innocently at his wife. He reached out and touched her stomach. Wife, your stomach. Before he could finish speaking, he felt a sudden force jolt his hand away. The young couple looked at each other in dismay. Arbor pacified baby Mo with his hand on her stomach. It really doesn't like you. In this regard, Crown Prince Mo was even more innocent. Look at who it likes. Other than the little stoic, it seemed like it would jolt away anyone who touched it 2 days ago, it even jolted Her Majesty the Empress away. That disdain was truly breathtaking. Hence, the Crown Prince felt that this wasn't the problem of being a father at all. There was something wrong with this baby. Upon seeing this, the little stoic said in deadly earnest, your baby is like you. You can't touch it. The Crown Prince, wife, you can't be like this. He hugged her and exclaimed, you can't blame every flaw on your husband. For example, was it his fault that his wife forcefully framed him for gluttony? Arbor ignored him and stroked baby Mo while muttering, baby, you can't be like your father. Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He lifted her up and lowered his head to bite her head. Do you want to go with hubby to raid your family tomorrow? The little stoic thought about it and nodded in all seriousness. Since husband has invited me, then I'll reluctantly go and take a look. Mo Lien almost laughed out loud. The next day, the imperial court announced that the Gu family had joined the Heavenly Fate Empire, causing an uproar in the entire capital. Every patrician family felt insecure and sent people to scout the situation. When the attendants reported to the family heads that the Crown Prince had led people to raid the Gu family early in the morning, the family heads started to feel uneasy. How could the Gu family be raided just like that? They had never heard of anyone from the Gu family colluding with the Heavenly Fate Empire. However, this time, it was said that an important pawn of the Heavenly Fate Empire was caught on the spot, and the Gu family's young Sir, Gu Yishuan, was also among them. After confirming the identity of the young master of the Gu family, Tian Yun, the entire Gu family was implicated by this brother. All the aristocratic families in the capital began to secretly investigate the identities of their disciples. Judging from the imperial court's swift and decisive style and their unrelenting attitude towards the Heavenly Fate Emperor, the situation would only become more and more tense. The patriarchs were all afraid that there would be 1 or 2 disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect hiding in their homes. At that time, they would not be able to defend themselves and implicate their families. Therefore, they secretly investigated in secret and were quite careful. The search of the Gu family was very fast. They went to search in the morning, and in the afternoon, they put all the boxes of things into the national treasury. The patriarchs of the various aristocratic families secretly met up and asked each other for information. It was needless to say that they were nervous. The little stoic followed her husband to ransack the Gu residence. After rummaging left and right, they also found some things, so this trip was not made in vain. After checking the Gu family, it was still early. The two of them planned to go to the newly opened snack shop nearby and buy a pack of snacks to eat on the way. In the end, as soon as they walked into the newly opened snack shop, they saw the Prince of Zheng, Mo Shikong, walking towards them while holding a graceful woman's arm. When Mo Shikong saw Mo Lien and her husband, his expression immediately darkened, and he almost failed to adjust his expression in time. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and immediately changed his expression, forcing out a stiff smile. I didn't expect to encounter His Highness the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess here. Arbor also didn't expect to see these two loathsome people here, and he pursed his small lips. Chapter 53:18. Mo Shikong was embracing the beautiful concubine, Madame Nei Lin. When that woman saw the little crown princess, her expression involuntarily stiffened, as if recalling the little stoic's blunt expression when they first met. Her gaze inadvertently flitted over Arbor's belly, and jealousy flashed through her eyes. She walked up and curtsied with a smile. "This concubine greets your highness and the crown princess." She was also pregnant, but the child she gave birth to had completely different statuses. Regardless of whether the crown princess gave birth to a boy or a girl, they would be His Highness the Crown Prince's first legitimate son and legitimate daughter. What about her? Even if she gave birth to a son for His Highness, he would be adopted by the princess consort. It was usually difficult for her to even see her son. Although His Highness doted on her, he never asked about the inner court's matters. No matter how she cried and threw tantrums, he advocated sending the child to the princess consort to raise. He even gloriously told her that this was for the child's own good. He said something about the child following his legitimate mother since he was young, so he could have a good future when he grew up. Madame Nei Lin was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. The child she painstakingly risked her life to give birth to was given to someone else. She was naturally unwilling. Now that she saw the little crown princess, her eyes suddenly swiveled. Just as she was about to speak, Prince Cheng tugged at her. Mo Lien couldn't be bothered to watch their little movements and said to Mo Shikong, "I heard that brother Prince Cheng gave birth to Lin, a month ago. Congratulations, congratulations." Mo Shikong responded with a fake smile and cupped his hands. You flatter me, you flatter me. His Highness the Crown Prince is the one who is overjoyed. The Crown Princess being pregnant is a joyous occasion for the entire kingdom. Mo Lien nodded repeatedly. She held the little Crown Princess' hand and said proudly, "Of course." Mo Shikong was instantly at a loss for words. "Fuck, I was just exchanging pleasantries with you, yet you answered so smoothly." This tsundere attitude really made one's balls hurt. What's wrong with being a little humble? Madame Nei Lin saw that the atmosphere had abruptly stiffened, so she quickly interrupted with a smile and complimented, "The Crown Princess's child will definitely be a little prince. This concubine congratulates the Crown Prince consort in advance." Unexpectedly, the little Crown Princess did not play by the rules. She said expressionlessly, "It's most likely a girl. Just like his father." The corners of the Crown Prince's mouth twitched. He wished he could reach out and touch his wife's little mouth. Fortunately, his wife gave him some face and didn't say in front of outsiders, "Like his father, loves to eat." Madame Lin looked at this strange Crown Prince consort and actually couldn't say anything. The Crown Prince coldly said, "Whether the Crown Princess gives birth to a boy or a girl, this Crown Prince will like them both." Mrs. Lin didn't know what to say, so she just stood there awkwardly. Mo Shikong smiled to ease the atmosphere. "It's better to meet by chance than by invitation. Why don't Big Brother treat us to a cup of tea on the second floor?" Before the Crown Prince could answer, the little Crown Princess shook her head with a serious expression. "King Zheng, you're a step too late. We've already invited Wuxia for tea." Mo Shikong, Prince Mo was secretly amused. He nodded and said, "That's true. Brother King Zheng, Wuxia invited us husband and wife yesterday." The flesh on Mo Shikong's face trembled slightly. He suddenly smiled and said, "Oh, I also heard that Wuxia and the third young master of the Fu clan are getting married next month. Then I should find time to go to the King of Zhenyuan's residence and congratulate them." Big Brother. Su Shitao rushed over excitedly. He suddenly stopped in his tracks and stared at Arbor as if he had seen a ghost. He subconsciously hid behind his big brother. Chapter 53:19. Why are you here? Su Shitao revealed a terrified expression when she saw Arbor. An ear-piercing shriek almost pierced everyone's eardrums. When King Jing saw Su Shitao's panicked and fearful expression, as his elder brother, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Su Shitao shuddered, as if she had thought of something terrifying. Her eyes widened as she stared blankly at Arbor. This crown princess would beat people up without any explanation. Moreover, she didn't do it herself and randomly found a mechanical puppet to fix them. Words couldn't describe her viciousness. Seeing her, Su Shitao recalled that she had recuperated in bed for more than a month before she could get out of bed and walk. She wasn't the most unlucky one. The unlucky one was that second miss of Count Huainan's estate, Feng Mingyue. The emperor ordered her to be sent to the nunnery, and she still couldn't return. That wasn't it. She seemed to have heard that second miss had returned and even caused a ruckus at the Qiao estate. As a result, she was sent to the nunnery a second time by this vicious and merciless crown princess. She didn't know if she could return in the short term. When she thought of this, Su Shitao couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Right now, she was very clear that she absolutely could not offend this crown prince consort. This person's temper was so terrible that she might be sent to the nunnery as well if things went wrong. If she was locked up in the nunnery for the rest of her life, then her life would truly be over. Then, she thought about how she had to swallow her anger and behave meekly every time she saw this stoic face in the future. The nameless rage in her heart couldn't help but erupt. Why did she have to endure this woman's anger everywhere? Her elder brother was Prince Zheng, after all. How could her status be compared to those ordinary noble daughters of officials and aristocratic families? Why did she have to endure this kind of anger? Despite her unwillingness, Su Shitao's actions were incomparably cowardly. When she saw the young crown princess glare at her, she only dared to hide behind Prince Zheng and didn't dare to poke her head out. Prince Zheng was also furious. Seeing his sister so scared, he felt guilty and distressed. He felt guilty that as her elder brother, he couldn't be her pillar of support. He felt sorry for his younger sister. When she saw the expressionless crown princess, she was like a mouse that saw a cat, trembling in fear. Mo Shikang, the prince of Zheng, felt very uncomfortable in his heart, but he scolded coldly, "Tao, how can you be so unruly? Hurry up and greet His Highness the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess." At this time, there were more and more people coming and going in the snack shop, but the five of them were blocking the entrance to talk. A few commoners who passed by heard King Zheng say the words, "Crown Prince." They were so scared that their legs turned to jelly and they fell to their knees. Su Shitao twisted the handkerchief in his hand, stammered as he stepped forward and bowed, "Ji greetings to your highness the Crown Prince, Ji Crown Princess, Crown Princess." Arbor looked at her expressionlessly and didn't say anything. The Crown Prince said faintly, "Brother King Zheng, we have an appointment with Wuxia. Please excuse us." Mo Shikang was so angry that his face trembled slightly. He pretended to be calm as he cupped his hands and bowed. Then, he watched as the two went in hand to buy several packets of snacks and left without looking back. Su Shitao had been hiding behind Mo Shikang. It was only when the two left the snack shop that he seemed to come alive. He curled his lips and complained to Mo Shikang, "Elder brother, I think the two of them don't even care about you." Chapter 53:20. Eldest brother, aren't you the Prince of Zheng personally conferred by the Emperor? Why do we always have to suffer in front of them? The little white flower, Lin Shi, hurriedly held on to Mo Shikang, who had an unsightly expression. She turned to Su Shitao and said, "Tao, your eldest brother is just being courteous to his brother." Su Shitao rolled his eyes at her with an angry expression. You definitely can't be courteous to that kind of person. You can't even take a step back. If you take a step back, they will take a step forward. Eldest brother, if you keep retreating, there will be no way out. At that time, where will our family retreat to? Lin Shi hurriedly comforted, little sister, didn't you say that the things in this newly opened dessert shop are not bad? How about I accompany you to pick some to bring home? However, Su Shitao did not give her any face and directly flung her hand away. He muttered, can't I pick it myself? I don't need you to say so much nonsense. Lin Shi's eyes turned red from grievance. Mo Shikong was a bit angry. Thinking that it was not good to berate his little sister in public, he glared at Su Shitao in irritation and pulled Lin Shi's hand to turn and leave. Why buy desserts? He was not in a good mood now and did not want to eat desserts. Arbor sat in a slightly swaying carriage. She opened the package of desserts and stuffed a piece into her mouth. Jojo's lotus. Why do you think that Mo Shikong invited us to tea for no reason? What is his motive? Mo Lian's mouth twitched. He opened several other packages of desserts and fed them to his wife. He probably just wants to express his goodwill to us. Who knew that his wife did not like this person at all? Arbor snorted. I feel uncomfortable when I see that little white flower pretending to be weak beside him. I, the crown princess, drink tea with a concubine. What would happen if word got out? Yes, 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 the crown princess is mighty. Prince Mo nodded in agreement and handed her a cup of brewed tea. Let's ignore that kind of brainless person. His Joe was right. They were of different statuses, so it would be awkward for them to sit together and drink tea. He looks like your old uncle king of Giant Pain. Mo Lien, ? That's strange. The king of Giant Pain is just sitting at home. How did disaster fall from the sky? If my wife wants to attack someone, then just attack them. Why did she have to drag the old prince of Giant Pain into it? Fickle and lecherous. The little crown princess had a serious expression on her face. And especially unreliable. Mo Lien was secretly amused, but on the surface, he looked like he seriously agreed with his wife's opinion. He thought that whatever his wife said was correct. Prince Mo nodded. That's right, wife. That Giant Pain Wang is simply too much. Her eldest brother and second brother had good points, but she didn't learn them. Instead, she picked up the bad habit of being a hedonistic and lecherous person. The next time we see him, we'll cheat him out of a sum of money. At the same time, the old King Giant Pain, who was far away in King Giant Pain's mansion, sneezed a few times and exchanged a glance with his son, Mo Kuan. Mo Kuan jumped up from his seat with a bang. Close the door, close the door. Immediately close the door. The old King Giant Pain asked speechlessly, what are you doing? Everything is fine. Why are you acting crazy? Close the door. Mo Kuan ignored his father's question and hurriedly ordered the servants in the mansion to close the main door of King Giant Pain's mansion. The old King Giant Pain was baffled. What are you doing? Mo Kuan shuddered a few times. Chapter 53:21. He leaned closer to the old king of Giant Pain with a strange expression. Father, I feel that a jinx might descend soon. It's better for us to protect ourselves and hide at home. Jinx? An expressionless face suddenly flashed past the old king of Giant Pain's eyes, and he couldn't help but shudder. His son's words should be credible. It was better to believe it than not. Since his son had said so, then it was better for the father and son to hide for a while. After all, if they were unlucky, they would gain some experience. Thinking that they might be unlucky after a while, the probability was probably quite high. If they hid, they would probably be able to avoid a lot of trouble. The old king of Giant Pain and his son closed their doors and declined guests from now on. When the emperor received the news the next day, he was puzzled and scolded jokingly, "What are the father and son up to again? Why are they closing their doors and declining guests?" These were all words for another day. At this moment, the little crown princess and the crown prince were scolding the old king of Giant Pain all the way to a tea house called Yongsheng on Changle Street. Third young Master Fu and Princess Wushuang had been waiting in the private room for a long time. Seeing the crown prince and his wife coming down from the carriage, Princess Wushuang leaned against the window and waved happily at them. "Here, here, come quickly." The two of them went up to the tea house and Third Fu personally opened the door to welcome them. Wushuang skipped forward and held Arbor's hand. She said with a smile, "Aya, you two are so slow. We've been waiting for you for so long." The little crown princess said expressionlessly, "We met an annoying person on the way and delayed some time." Prince Mo followed behind his wife and glanced at Wushuang, who was holding his wife's arm, pitifully. He placed a few bags of snacks on the table. Third young Master Fu was secretly amused. He coughed lightly, closed the door, and walked forward. Shuang quickly returned the crown princess to the crown prince. Wushuang turned to glance at Mo Lien, pursed her lips, and continued to hook onto Arbor. "Brother, don't be so petty. I'll just hold on to my sister-in-law for half a day at most. You can stay by my sister-in-law's side day and night." Prince Mo saw that she was not tactful and glared at her in annoyance. "How is it? Have you bought everything you need?" The little stoic asked curiously, "I heard that you beat up Third Fu on the day you received the wedding date." "Why? It's all because of him." Princess Wushuang was furious when she talked about it. "He bribed the imperial astronomer to calculate the date to next month." Shuang, I already said that I didn't bribe anyone. This is the date chosen by His Majesty and Empress." Third young Master Fu said with an aggrieved expression, "What's more, there are only 2 auspicious dates after the new year. If we don't get married next month, we will have to wait until July or August." Princess Wushuang was expressionless. "July or August is not too late." "Late, of course it's late." Third young Master Fu quickly sat down beside his wife and took her little hand. "It's urgent." "Who's in a hurry?" Princess Wushuang was embarrassed, but her small face still maintained its composure. "I'm not in a hurry, I'm not in a hurry at all." Right, your husband is in a hurry, your husband is especially in a hurry. And your father is actually also in a hurry, extremely anxious." Princess Wushuang reached out and pinched his arm hard. She roared, "What did you say?" Third young Master Fu immediately shut his mouth. Chapter 53:22. He immediately realized that he had said something wrong and tried to salvage the situation. "Your father is not anxious, but I am. I am very anxious." Princess Wushuang snorted and did not say anything else. The little crown princess pursed her lips and tugged at Wushuang's sleeve. "Wushuang, just marry him. If Third Fu dares to hurt you, I will beat him to death for you." "Third Master Fu, why do I feel so worried?" He felt a chill at the back of his neck. When he saw the little crown princess shooting daggers at him, Third Master Fu froze. Oh my God, he had finally married his wife and he did not dare to do anything bad to her. He looked pleadingly at Prince Mo, who was watching from the side. Third Master Fu tilted his chin at him, implying that he should say something for his brother. Mo Lien coughed lightly and said reluctantly, "Jojo, don't worry. Third Fu is not like Uncle Wang." Who was Uncle Wang? Third young Master Fu had a bad feeling. He is like the old prince of Giant Pain who has a lot of concubines. My wife hates it the most. Mo Lien said seriously. Third Master Fu quickly took Princess Wushuang's hand and swore, "Wife, it was not easy for me to marry you. Don't worry, there won't be anyone else." Never. The little crown princess pursed her lips and rubbed salt into Third Master Fu's wound. I am afraid that Miss Bao has not been settled yet. What Miss Bao? Third Master Fu's heart sank when he saw his wife's expression change. He quickly said, there is no Miss Bao. Wife, don't worry. We don't have to care about that kind of person. Princess Wuxia also got angry when she thought about it. Can we not care about her? That Miss Bao has always wanted to marry into your general's residence. Madame Bao's family must have been like this. She taught the girls how to climb up the social ladder. Princess Wuxia had sent someone to investigate Bao Cuiping's family in secret. This family was strange. Every woman from the Bao family was either a second wife or a concubine. None of them was a legitimate wife. The old master of the Bao family made his fortune by selling his daughter for glory. Since then, the Bao family had been following the old master's footsteps. They continued to sell their daughters for glory and benefits. This had probably become a tradition of the Bao family. Bao Cuiping was even more outstanding. She usually stayed with her aunt, Madame Bao, and treated her like a real mother and daughter. Her aunt was also a very strange person. Clearly, the Empress had already issued a marriage decree for her niece and son. Madame Bao even tried her best to match Bao Cuiping with third young Master Fu. He was truly a person with an incomparably eccentric brain circuit. He didn't know what was going on in her head. It was as if she had entered a dead end and couldn't get out. When third Fu mentioned Bao Cuiping, he couldn't help but feel depressed. Encountering a cowhide plaster that couldn't be shaken off, it was really difficult for him to say anything. He held Princess Wuxuang's small hand and said to her with a smile, "My wife, you just need to be at ease and marry me. Leave the rest to the crown prince." Prince Mo looked at third young Master Fu with a stunned expression. They were really brothers who were willing to sacrifice themselves for each other. How did he get implicated for no reason when he was just sitting there? How do you want me to help you? Prince Mo was speechless. I want to borrow some people from the crown prince. I have a feeling that things will get chaotic on that day. Chapter 53-23. There was nothing wrong with making preparations first. Prince Mo nodded without hesitation. I'll give you 100 men from the Purple Forest Guards for you to use. Then, I'll have the men from the city defense camp patrol around your house. Nothing will go wrong on the day of the wedding. Third young Master Fu nodded repeatedly. I can't thank you with words. I'll remember it in my heart. Prince Mo rolled his eyes at him and said in annoyance, it's just a small matter. Sister-in-law, I saw that a new jewelry shop opened next door. Let's go take a look. While we're at it, let's get a gold necklace for my unborn nephew. The two men immediately looked at them eagerly. Princess Wuxuang raised her head and snorted. You men can stay here and continue drinking tea. We'll be back soon. Wife. How heartless. His wife left him behind just like that and walked off with Princess Wuxuang, arm in arm. The two men stared at each other and silently picked up their teacups to drink. After Arbor and Princess Wuxuang walked out of the door, he asked her in a low voice, did that Miss Bao find trouble with you again? She had long wanted to ask Princess Wuxuang about these girls' private conversations, but it was not appropriate for her to ask because the two men were in the way. Princess Wuxuang quickly shook her head. Sister-in-law, don't worry. That Miss Bao won't bully me. Arbor nodded. It made sense. Princess Wuxuang was a godly state expert. How could she be bullied by the weak Miss Bao? She was the one who had overthought things because she was too concerned. Arbor looked back at Wuxuang and said with a serious expression, but speaking of which, that Miss Bao who fainted easily that day is actually safer at home. What do you mean? Princess Wuxuang's mouth twitched. She had a feeling that the little crown princess would not say anything good. As expected, the young crown prince consort solemnly said, it's not easy to treat her illness of fainting at the drop of a hat. Think about it. If she stays at home, at least there will be servants to support her if she falls on the ground. There will also be doctors willing to visit her. But what if she falls on the streets or in front of a brothel? What should we do? If she was picked up by the brothel, wouldn't she have to strangle her hair and become a prostitute, or directly smash her head against a pillar to death? Princess Wuxia resisted the urge to burst into laughter. However, she heard an exasperated scream behind her. What did you say? Princess Wuxia was stunned when she heard the voice. She turned around and hid the shock in her eyes. She stared at the person with an indifferent expression. As for the madam of the Lin family, she avoided the passers-by early in the morning and secretly came to the back door of the Prince Zheng's mansion while wiping her sweat. After waiting for a long time, someone opened the side door and welcomed them in. Madam Lin couldn't sit still in the side hall, pacing back and forth. It wasn't until the sound of footsteps came from outside the side hall that Madam Lin stopped and hurriedly turned her head back with a smile. She stepped forward with an apologetic smile and grabbed a woman's hand. "Cousin, I've finally met you. These days, your younger sister misses you very much and wanted to see you several times, but the gatekeeper said that you were sick." Madame Liang covered her mouth and coughed softly a few times. Madame Lin's eyes flashed. She reached out with a smile and helped her to a seat. "Cousin, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Madame Lin, please sit." Madame Liang nodded and said, "Why are you here? You can tell me directly." Chapter 53-24. Madame Liang was very clear about this cousin of hers. She would not visit a master without a reason. For her to be so courteous today, she must have something to ask of her. Seeing Madame Liang being so cold, Madame Lin felt that she had asked for a snub, so she said with an awkward expression, "Oh, it's not that important. It's just that Miao was captured by the people of the Heavenly Fate Palace, and they still haven't let her go. I'm anxious, and I heard from husband that he had already come to ask for instructions from the prince." "I don't know." Madame Liang quickly retracted her hand and said in fear and trepidation, "I'm just a woman. I don't understand what you're saying to me. That Heavenly Fate Palace, I don't know and don't understand. Don't ask me, don't ask me." As she said this, she seemed to be very flustered, and her entire body trembled. Madame Lin looked at her in confusion. "Cousin, why are you so afraid?" Madame Liang trembled. "I'm not afraid. She just didn't want to cause trouble. It was about the Heavenly Fate Palace, and she came to find a woman without any cultivation." "What was this?" "Cousin, you have to help our Miao." As Madame Lin spoke, she was about to kneel to Madame Liang. Madame Liang quickly went to support her, saying, "Madame Lin, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's just that I'm just a woman without the strength to truss a chicken. I really can't help you much. Then bring me to the prince. The prince can't not help us." Madame Lin grabbed Madame Liang's hand, revealing a bit of hysteria. "Our husband said that he's done many big things for your prince. The prince can't ignore our Miao." Madam. Hurried footsteps came from outside, and a middle-aged man came in, flustered and exasperated. He glared at Madame Lin, his eyes almost burning with anger. "Madam, what are you doing here? Quickly come back with me and don't disturb Madame Su." "Husband, why are you pulling me? If you hadn't helped their prince to surround His Highness the Crown Prince, who had returned from Huiping village, how could our Lin family be targeted by the Crown Prince? Wasn't it because we offended the Crown Prince? Master, why do you keep tugging at me? Am I not telling the truth? If it weren't for you helping His Highness set up the Lin family restaurant to defeat the Crown Princess Kaidai Pavilion, our Lin family wouldn't have offended the Crown Princess even more." "Alright, shut up." The Lin family patriarch scolded angrily. A cold voice came from outside the door. "Oh. It seems that Madame Lin is quite dissatisfied with this prince. Mrs. Lin held Mo Shikong's hand and walked in. When she saw her official mother, her eyes flashed slightly. Lin Furen's anger rose from her heart. She couldn't help but rebuke, "I don't dare to be dissatisfied. It's just that this madam has some complaints about Wanya's actions." "Shut up." Patriarch Lin wished he could slap this stupid woman to death. How could he be so stupid? This stupid woman. Who did she think she was facing? That was King Zheng. He was the only adopted son of the great emperor. She was so audacious to speak to Zheng Wang in such a manner. Was she tired of living? But Madame Lin had already thrown caution to the wind for the sake of her daughter, Lin Miao's life. She didn't fight back now and didn't fight for her daughter's life. The longer this dragged on, the more uneasy she felt. Lin Miao was her only daughter. Chapter 53-25. Ever since our Lin family moved from Rong City to the capital, we have always been used by your highness. For so many days, we have been obedient to your highness's orders. Your highness, I have long hair and little knowledge. I've made you laugh. Although I don't know much, I do know one thing. Our master said that as long as your highness says something, someone will definitely do something for you and release our Miao. Our master is already begging you like this. Please, on account of my heart as a mother, can't you be a little more flexible?" At this point, Madame Lin suddenly saw a cold light flash through Mo Shikong's eyes. It was like a dark starry sky, without any light at all. Madame Lin's heart trembled slightly. Then she heard Mo Shikong say coldly, "I'll take it that you're a woman talking nonsense and don't know anything. Lin family head, you need to take your wife back and teach her a lesson." Yes, this lowly one will definitely obey." Master Lin nodded and bowed repeatedly, looking anxious and uneasy. Madame Lin was furious. She suddenly shook off Master Lin's hand and said angrily, "Your Highness, let's not beat around the bush in front of honest people. Our Lin family has helped you so much, and now it's just a small request. Are you not willing to help even if it's like this?" "Shut up." Master Lin was shocked and angry. He stared at his wife angrily. His wife was good at everything, but she was always worried. Once it involved her daughter, Miao, she easily lost control of her emotions. Just like now, she was facing the prince aggressively. Who did she think he was that he could let her order him around like this? It was ridiculous. Master Lin reprimanded angrily, "Madam, don't say any more. I've already discussed Miao's matter with the prince. You're a woman, so don't interfere in this matter." "I don't interfere." "If I don't interfere, who can interfere? If I don't interfere, will you interfere? As a father, if you really care about your daughter's life, you wouldn't have dragged it out for 3 to 4 months and still haven't rescued her." Master Lin's expression was very ugly for a moment. His wife didn't give him any face in front of so many people. As the head of the Lin family and the head of the Lin family, he was in an awkward position. Mo Shikong stared coldly at the middle-aged woman. She was slightly plump and her voice was especially loud. This Madame Lin raised her voice, with an attitude that no one would be able to persuade her back. This made Mo Shikong's eyes turn cold. Standing by the door, Mrs. Lin, who had been holding Mo Shikong's arm, hurriedly stepped forward. Acting like a peacemaker, she said softly, "Mother, if you have anything to say, please say it nicely. Don't be angry with the prince. Sister Miao is missing. We are all very worried." Madame Lin did not care about this concubine's daughter at all. She opened her mouth and scolded, "Get lost, you shameless thing. The entire Lin family's face has been thrown away by you. What right do you have to speak here?" Mrs. Lin's soft hand froze in midair. She quickly turned around and covered her face as she wept softly. Mo Shikong's expression turned even uglier. He raised his hand to pull the aggrieved Lin Wan and turned to glare at Madame Lin. He said coldly, Madam Lin is really arrogant. Master Lin is really well educated, Mo Shikong scolded angrily. Chapter 53-26. Madam Lin barged into my mansion and not only loudly berated this prince's concubine, but also spoke disrespectfully to this prince. Today really opened this prince's eyes. Family head Lin's head was drenched in cold sweat. He quickly bowed and repeatedly said, Your Highness, please forgive me, Your Highness. Madam has been thinking about her daughter for the past few days and is somewhat delirious. This one will take her back and discipline her strictly. Mo Shikong coldly glanced at family head Lin and his wife, then turned to the trembling Madame Liang and said, Mother, you and Wan, return to the room first. Okay. Madame Liang was already scared to death. She was originally very timid, and just now, she was frightened by Madame Lin's shouts. Now, her legs were trembling and she couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that her son wanted her to return to the room, she quickly nodded and supported Madame Lin to leave together. On the other hand, Madame Lin was clearly not reconciled. She still wanted to stay here and wait to see what kind of good end that old woman would have. All day long, she put on the airs of a legitimate mother. She had already married into Prince Zheng's mansion and became the woman of the prince, but this old woman still dared to be so arrogant and despotic. She deserved to be severely punished by the prince. Family head Lin, it's not convenient to talk here. Bring madam and follow this prince. Mo Shikong turned and left with a gloomy expression. Family head Lin's face instantly paled. He answered submissively and trembled as he brought Madame Lin to a small room in the side hall. Madame Lin, how do you know that this prince has the ability to rescue Miss Lin? Mo Shikong asked calmly, do you know who has your Miss Lin in their hands? Madame Lin nodded repeatedly, it's those fanatics from Tianyun who kidnapped my daughter. Please, Your Highness, save our Miao, her. For Your Highness, this is just a matter of lifting your hand. Oh. Mo Shikong's eyes flashed, and he suddenly asked with a chuckle, how does Madame Lin know that helping Tianyun release Miss Lin is a matter of lifting my hand for this prince? Madame Lin was slightly stunned. She turned her head and saw her master's dark old face. She stammered and didn't dare to make a sound. From the looks of it, Madame Lin is very clear that the relationship between me and Tianyun is not shallow. Madame Lin braced herself and nodded. She smiled embarrassedly and said, our master said that Wang Yi is a very capable person. Lin family head, you really dare to say anything in front of Madame. The Lin family head felt a chill run down his spine and quickly said, Your Highness, please calm down. The heavens and earth can bear witness to this. This subordinate is completely devoted to His Highness and would never dare to easily tell others about His Highness's matters. As for how my wife found out, I'm afraid she overheard it. Oh. Mo Shikong sneered and nodded. Eavesdropping on Master Lin's secret, your wife is really amazing. He stood up and walked out, leaving a faint sentence, I don't want anyone to know my identity for the time being. Family head Lin gritted his teeth and his hands trembled slightly. Lin Furen looked back with a confused expression, why did Wang Yi leave after saying a few words? What's going on? Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. Lin Furen turned her face with a startled expression. She saw family head Lin tilting his head slightly, holding a trembling sword in his hand. More than half of the sword sank into her lower back. Chapter 53-27. Just like this, without any warning her own husband actually raised a sword to kill her. Madame Lin stared at Patriarch Lin in shock. She felt a chill on her back. The sword had pierced a big hole in her body. When she pulled it out, she saw that she had spurted out a lot of blood. Blood dripped onto the ground in an instant. There was a circle of dripping blood all around. It was her blood that was flowing out of her body. Madame Lin didn't know that a person could bleed so much before they died. Her face was full of astonishment and disbelief. She didn't understand why her husband would be so cruel to her out of the blue. However, she didn't have time to think about it. She felt a chill at the back of her waist, and her whole body fell to the ground, lying there heavily. Perhaps even until her death, she didn't know which sentence had thoroughly offended this prince and made him ruthlessly give the order to put her to death. The bloody sword in Patriarch Lin's hand fell to the ground with a clang. He picked up his wife, who had fallen to the ground with her eyes wide open. He couldn't help but feel sad. The secret relationship between the prince and Tianyun was a secret that no one could tell. Madame was like a blabbermouth. If she talked nonsense, she might ruin the prince's plan. Madam! Patriarch Lin cried. I only hope that you can control your mouth in the next life and stop talking nonsense. On the other side, Arbor and Wushuang had not reached the jewelry shop when they heard an angry rebuke behind them. Who are you talking about? Who is going to a brothel? Who is going to twist her hair and become a sister-in-law? The voice trembled with anger. The little crown princess was stunned. She held Princess Wushuang's hand and turned around to look. They couldn't help but look at each other. Don't talk nonsense in broad daylight. Someone appeared in front of them after a few words. Miss Bao was wearing a blazing red dress today. There was a trace of anger on her graceful face. She stared at Arbor and Princess Wushuang in a daze. She couldn't believe her ears. There was actually such a vicious and cunning woman in the world who was good at taking advantage of others. They actually criticized her behind her back and even said that she would end up in a brothel. They even said that she might strangle her hair and become a prostitute. You are simply vicious. Bao Cuiping was so angry that she looked like she was about to faint. Bao Cuiping's personal maidservant hurriedly stepped forward to support her, her face filled with righteous indignation. The two of you, there is no enmity between us. But today, you actually slandered my family's young lady behind her back. This is too unreasonable. Princess Wushuang blinked and asked, who slandered your daughter? This was truly baffling. She and Jojo were just strolling around and chatting. How did Miss Bao, who had such a strange mind, turn it into a vicious slander? What did they talk about? You guys, just now. Miss Bao clutched her chest with one hand. She looked like she was struggling in pain and could not breathe. Just now, you know very well what you were talking about. Miss Fang's body was swaying. The young crown prince consort hastily reminded her out of good intentions. She then said in all seriousness, be careful, Miss Bao. The ground is hard and stiff from your fall. It's hard to say if all your bones will break, but your head will definitely bruise. Chapter 53:28. When Bao Cuiping heard this, she hurriedly put on an appearance of being out of breath. She extended a trembling finger and pointed at the young crown prince consort, trembling. Crown princess, your words are too infuriating. Beside Bao Cuiping, a loyal servant girl shouted in exasperation, even if you beat me to death today, I will do my best to persuade you. You have no enmity with my family's young Mississippi. You can't be biased against my miss just because you are partial to Princess Wushuang. Every time you see my miss, you criticize her. The little crown princess was baffled. She turned to look at Princess Wushuang. I criticized her. Princess Wushuang shook her head with a serious expression. Sister-in-law, you are just speaking the truth. That's right. Sir Jojo nodded in agreement. Then, he frowned and looked at Bao Cuiping. Miss Bao, I see that your face is pale, your ears are blue, and there is a black pimple on the tip of your nose. This is a sign of excessive worry. It means that you have a knot in your heart that cannot be untied. You have to be more relaxed in daily life. Otherwise, it will really affect your health in the future. The little crown princess' tone was very calm. If it is light, you will go crazy. If it is serious, you will not be able to conceive a child. You have to be careful. Your symptoms are more serious than the last time I saw you. Bao Cuiping was so angry that her limbs trembled. Her body was cold as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. This crown princess insulted her every time she saw her. She said that she was infertile every time. How could she say such things? She was still an unmarried young lady. If she said this to the crown princess a few more times, the whole capital would probably spread the rumor that she was infertile. Bao Cuiping was so angry that her whole body trembled. She was on the verge of collapsing. If it were not for the two servant girls supporting her on both sides, Bao Cuiping would not be able to stand. The little crown princess glanced at her and shook her head. She said in a serious tone, "Your foundation is weak. It is not good for you to eat too much. It is best to eat something light on a daily basis. Being young is an asset. You can still be saved if you recover well." "Shut up." Bao Cuiping finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Like a volcano erupting, she tightly gripped the hands of the two maidservants and borrowed their strength. Her entire body trembled as she screamed at the top of her lungs. They were originally standing on the street. This shout attracted the attention of all the passers-by. The little crown princess was also shocked by Miss Bao's sudden outburst. Her dark eyes looked at the other party in confusion. Princess Wuxia reacted quickly and raised her hand in front of the young crown princess. This was to prevent Miss Bao from rashly bumping into her sister-in-law and hitting her stomach. Don't think that just because you're the crown princess, you can spout nonsense and ridicule others. Bao Cuiping shouted harshly, "In this world, we still pay attention to the law. As the future mother of the nation, you have to be virtuous and pay attention to your words and actions. Don't talk nonsense and accuse others." The little crown princess looked as if she was saying, "What did I accuse you of?" When Princess Wuxia, who was watching silently from the side, saw this, she almost laughed out loud. She could guarantee that what her sister-in-law said to Bao Cuiping just now was from the perspective of a doctor. She was definitely not trying to scare Bao Cuiping. The fact that the little crown princess could say so much could only mean one thing. There was really something wrong with Bao Cuiping's body. Her sister-in-law was just pointing out the problem. Chapter 53-29. Unfortunately, honest advice grated on the ear. This Miss Bao was in a state of complete disregard. Not only did Miss Bao not listen, but she also felt very good about herself. Arbor was truly baffled. He glared at Bao Cuiping, and a thin layer of anger covered his face. His voice also involuntarily rose a few notches. Preposterous. The little stoic forcefully flung her sleeves and huffed, simply unreasonable. "Wuxia, let's go." "Okay." Princess Wuxia secretly suppressed her laughter and nodded. She hooked her sister-in-law's arm and strode quickly toward the jewelry store. Her sister-in-law's angry bun-like face was especially amusing. She really wanted to poke her small stoic face with a finger. Unfortunately, Princess Wuxia still withdrew her hand cowardly. She didn't need to turn her head to sense that her eldest brother, the crown prince, was currently watching them from the nearby tea-house. Needless to say, they also saw the scene at the tea-house's entrance just now. That's right, Bao Cuiping's terrifying shout could be heard by everyone on the street. How could the crown prince and third young master Fu, who were in the tea-house, not know? On the other side, Bao Cuiping nearly fainted from anger. When she thought of how she didn't have time to say anything serious to that proud commandery princess, those two actually abandoned her and left. She was so angry that her chest hurt. She hastily instructed her two personal maidservants to support her tottering body as she followed them. This crown princess was simply arrogant and despotic. She was the unreasonable person. Bao Zuiping arrived at the jewelry store's entrance in a gloomy mood and looked up at the brand new entrance. This jewelry store had just opened recently, so there were quite a lot of people going in and out. Everyone came for the novelty and felt that some of the jewelry designs were very good. When Arbor and Princess Wushuang were looking around inside, they saw Bao Zuiping enter with a dark face supported by two maidservants, fully displaying the delicate and frail appearance of a wealthy young miss. The two silently looked at each other and saw the word impatience in each other's eyes. This Miss Bao really wasn't done, was she? As soon as Miss Bao entered the jewelry store, she saw a large tray placed next to Princess Wushuang's hand. There were many dazzling golden ornaments inside. The princess was talking to the old shopkeeper, who was nodding and smiling, about making a new set of gold bracelets and necklaces. The shopkeeper listened and took notes at the same time, nodding his head enthusiastically. From time to time, he would take out some new designs for the princess to choose from. Arbor stood to the side and flipped through a jewelry booklet, pausing from time to time. Seeing that Bao Zuiping was walking towards them, Arbor glanced around and Li Yi immediately appeared beside Bao Zuiping like a ghost. She stretched out her hand and blocked Bao Zuiping's path. "Get out of the way." Bao Zuiping couldn't help but look angry. Li Yi was expressionless as she said, "Miss, if you don't want to be kicked out by me, Li Yi advises you to leave this place as soon as possible." Bao Zuiping glared at Li Yi, her eyes blazing with anger. "What do you mean by that?" "Literally." Li Yi said faintly. "Don't tell me you dare to fight with me." Bao Zuiping's expression was one of disbelief as she shouted sternly, "This little girl only wants to say a few words to the princess. Do you have to stop me from going up like this?" "What, your princess can't be seen." Princess Wushuang glanced at her. "Slap her." Chapter 53:30. Princess Wushuang had just finished her sentence. A red ferrule immediately appeared in Li Ye's hand. With a "pa" sound, she slapped Bao Zuiping's incessant chattering mouth. Miss Bao couldn't help but be stunned. She stared at Li Yi in disbelief. She couldn't believe that she would be whipped by a ruler in front of so many people. Li Ye's actions were swift. Almost at the same time Princess Wushuang gave the order, she had already taken out the red ferrule and slapped Miss Bao a few times. The little crown princess couldn't help but twitch her lips. She felt that this scene was a little funny. Why did Li Yi bring a ferrule with her, and her actions were so mechanical? Once the princess gave the order, Li Yi immediately took out the ferrule and executed it without a second word. It was as if she had been waiting for a long time and was ready to hit Bao Zuiping any time. "Miss." The two servant girls turned pale with fright and rushed forward, hurriedly supporting Miss Bao as they retreated backwards. However, they pounced on a barrier. It was then that they realized that Miss Li Yi had actually set up a barrier in front of them. How could two ordinary servant girls go up to rescue her? She could only watch helplessly as her young miss suffered under Li Ye's ferrule, bit by bit. "Miss." The two servant girls were so anxious that they ran in circles outside the barrier. They used all their strength to hit that thick transparent barrier but were unable to pass through. "Miss. Miss." In the jewelry shop, the shopkeeper kept quiet out of fear and didn't dare to make a sound. A few madams and young ladies who were choosing jewelry were also hiding by the side. They only dared to watch from afar and didn't dare to step forward to stop them. Moreover, to put it bluntly, they didn't understand what was going on and naturally wouldn't step forward to say anything. After all, when the Crown Princess and Princess Wushuang entered the shop, they had also stepped forward to greet them. At that time, those two nobles had very politely asked them not to be overly courteous. They also didn't see the Crown Princess and Princess Wushuang speaking so bluntly to anyone. They guessed that this miss must have offended the nobles somehow. Otherwise, why would the two nobles only ask people to punish her? Over the past few days, the prestigious madams and young misses in the capital had all come to understand the habits of our little Crown Princess. That is, if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If you simply bumped into her on the road and didn't provoke her or even greet her, nothing would happen. But once you get hit there would definitely be an unexpected, great harvest. Several young ladies gathered together and whispered to each other. Their gazes were puzzled as they looked at the woman who was being slapped behind the barrier. Hey, isn't that Miss Bao from Marquis Ning's estate? I think so. What Changmingho estate's Miss Bao? She was just the niece of Marquis Ning's second wife. She can't be considered the young miss of Marquis Ning's estate. I heard that she was recently betrothed to the fourth young master of Marquis Ning's estate. Or was it a decree from the empress herself? It said that Miss Bao isn't satisfied with such an honorable thing. Why? One of the young ladies looked in surprise at the insider and said disdainfully, "What's there to be dissatisfied about?" Exactly. A harsh-looking madam interrupted with a laugh, "Their Bao family is the joke of the entire capital. The girls in their family never marry a first wife." Chapter 53:31. If she's not a concubine, she'll be a concubine. At most, she'll be a second wife. Now, fourth young master is the second legitimate son of Marquis Changmingho's mansion. She can marry the second legitimate son and be his legal wife. What's there to be dissatisfied about? The young ladies covered their handkerchiefs and snickered as they nodded. What are you talking about? He has high standards. Didn't she have some trouble with the eldest legitimate son of the Fu family, General and Nan? It said that she asked her aunt, the second wife of Marquis Changmingho's mansion, to spread rumors that she was engaged to third young Master Fu. At this point, the woman couldn't help but burst into laughter. In the end, she was slapped in the face by third young master. Third young master went to the palace and asked for His Majesty's imperial edict to marry Princess Wushuang. Everyone looked thoughtfully at Princess Wushuang and the crown princess. No way, Miss Bao would do such a shameless thing. If a cow doesn't drink water, do you think you can force it to drink? Pfft, that's right. That's why the Bao family is full of weirdos. So today's matter, Miss Bao was the one who started it? A young lady said softly. His Majesty has already betrothed Princess Wushuang and third young Master Fu. Why is she still looking for him? Miss Yang, with the Bao family's upbringing, how can they raise a good girl? They're all short-sighted people. How can they be like Miss Yang, who comes from a scholarly family and whose mother is well known in the capital city for being virtuous? Our upbringing is completely different from theirs. The soft-spoken young lady smiled shyly at the woman. Madam, you flatter me. The madams and young misses gathered together and discussed in low voices. Although their voices weren't loud, every word and sentence fell into Bao Cuiping's ears. It angered her to the point of flying out of her body. Her entire body was dizzy and she fell down unsteadily. Li Yi held the ferrule expressionlessly and punished Bao Cuiping. When she hit her 50 times, Princess Wushuang said lightly, "That's enough." Li Yi took back her ferrule. With a stoic expression, she took out a yellow handkerchief and wiped the ferrule with force. He threw away the handkerchief, put away the ruler, and removed the barrier. With a serious expression, he returned to the side of the little crown princess. Princess Wushuang looked at the girl and could not help but twitch her mouth. Strange. She wondered if it was just her imagination. Why did she feel that Lia's stoic face was somewhat similar to her sister-in-law's? Could it be that he was more like a master? Mississippi, 2 servant girls rushed over and reached out to support Bao Cuiping. Bao Cuiping's body went soft and she collapsed. The 2 servant girls' arms were thin and weak, and their strength was weak. They were unable to support her, and one on her left and one on her right, they collapsed to the ground. At this moment, Bao Cuiping's cheeks were already swollen. Her mouth was swollen like a bloody steamed bun. When she opened her mouth, 2 missing teeth were revealed. Cuiping, Cuiping. A young man rushed into the jewelry shop like a gust of wind. He looked at Bao Cuiping, who was lying on the ground with her mouth swollen and broken from the beating. He cried out in grief and rushed over. The madams and young ladies gathered together whispered to each other and discussed in low voices. There, that's the fourth young master of the Fu family, Miss Bao's fiancé. Chapter 53-32. One of the ladies commented, although this fourth young master is not as handsome and elegant as the third young master, he is still quite good-looking and has all four limbs. That's right. Miss Bao comes from a small family. What's there to be dissatisfied about marrying into Marquis Ning's mansion as a legitimate wife? A man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. This girl is just arrogant. She's seen better, so of course she doesn't want to settle for this one. The third young master has to be interested in her first. I saw the third young master and Princess Wuxia walking together last time. They really look like a perfect couple. A young lady glanced at Bao Cuiping with disdain. So shameless. She's already been betrothed by His Majesty and will be getting married soon. If she's a well-educated young lady, why would she get involved in other people's affairs? That's right. She even did something like that before. She slandered and spread rumors about a fake engagement with the third young master. If we were exposed, we wouldn't even dare to look at the princess. Even if we met her on the road, we would have run away in shame. That's right, that's right. I heard that the Fu family's eldest young miss and second young miss are also unhappy about this. That's right. Miss Bao slandered their younger brother. Which elder sister would be happy to hear this? Shut up, all of you. Fourth young Master Fu was so angry that his chest tightened when he heard the crowd criticizing Bao Cuiping. What was going on? Why was Cuiping beaten up like this when she was fine in the morning? And these gossipy women were all gossiping about Cuiping. Cuiping was a girl. How could she stand this? She had fainted from anger, but these people still refused to let her go. They were crazy. Princess Wuxia, although you're an imperial princess, you can't bully a young lady from Marquis Ning's mansion. Fourth young Master Fu scolded angrily. Isn't it enough that she fainted from anger? You still let these people and so many mouths humiliate and scold her. Do you have any humanity? Hey, fourth young master, we don't like what you're saying. A woman with a rather shrewish personality immediately retorted without giving him any face. How did we humiliate Miss Bao? We're all here, talking among ourselves. She can just ignore us. Why did she have to faint from anger? Miss Yang said softly, no one said anything. That's right. You dare to do it, but you're afraid of others talking about it. Another young lady used a fan to cover her mouth and rolled her eyes in disdain. Fourth young master, we didn't scold her. You have to clarify this matter. Princess Wuxia glanced at fourth young master Fu nonchalantly. Before she could speak, a gloomy voice sounded from the door. Fourth Fu, take your woman and get out of here immediately. In the future, don't be an eyesore in front of my wife. If you treasure her, then take her back with you. You're going to put in a lot of effort. It was best to lock him in his room and not let him out again. Otherwise, he'll act like a mad dog and bite everyone he catches. Third young Master Fu strode in and started to scold him. He did not give fourth young Master Fu any face at all. Also, we'll get married at the general's mansion. At that time, your mother won't have to come over and make arrangements. My two older sisters will come over to help. Chapter 53-33. You and that woman can stay at Chang Ningho's residence and continue to be lovey-dovey with each other. You don't have to be an eyesore in front of us. When these words were spoken, everyone could not help but be somewhat dumbfounded. General Nan meant that he would not invite the second madam and the others to the wedding. They wondered if Chang Ningho would faint from anger when he heard this. You. Fourth young Master Fu was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His entire body was shaking non-stop. Was there anything more shameless than this? He had said it in front of so many people and there was no need for the mother and son to be there. Third young Master Fu walked to the princess's side and took her hand. He lowered his head and asked, "Did you suffer any grievances?" The princess rolled her eyes speechlessly. "What grievances can I suffer? If anyone dares to shout in front of me, I will hit her back." "Good." Third young Master Fu immediately smiled and hugged her. "You are indeed my beloved wife. This is what you should do. I didn't marry my wife to let her suffer. In the future, when you meet these people, you don't have to give them any face. Just hit them." In front of so many people, Princess Wuxia was so embarrassed by this man that her face turned red. She did not have the nerve to hit him. But she could not help but glare at him. This man's words were too shameless. Prince Mo followed in and walked to Jojo's side. When the madams and misses saw them, they hurried forward to greet them. After greeting third young Master Fu, they retreated to the side and stole glances at them. Bao Cuiping fainted from anger 3 times. She had already woken up, but then she heard those gossipy madams and misses talking about her, saying that she was shameless. She fainted from anger. When she woke up again, she heard the person she liked coldly tell fourth cousin to take this woman and get out of their sight. This time, she really fainted from anger. She could not accept that the person she liked could be so cold to her. She had loved him for so many years, but in the end, it was all a stupid joke. When she woke up again, she felt as if there was something stuck in her chest and it was difficult to calm down. Bao Cuiping's eyes were misty as she looked at her fourth cousin with teary eyes. She sobbed, "Cousin, help me up." Fourth young Master Fu immediately helped her up, his heart aching. "Cuiping, you've suffered." Miss Bao sobbed as if she had suffered all the coldness and grievances in the world. She sobbed uncontrollably. Third young Master Fu rolled his eyes. "Your aunt is not dead yet. There is no need to cry here. When they die, there will be plenty of opportunities for you to cry." Everyone was once again dumbfounded. After witnessing third young Master Fu's poisonous mouth, they could only exchange an indescribable look. Third young master was so ruthless towards Miss Bao. She really couldn't understand how that young lady could be so foolish as to fall head first into the trap and marry no one else but third young master. In their opinion, there must be something wrong with Miss Bao's brain. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. What could they do? The third young master was highly regarded by the emperor and was also a close friend of the crown prince. It was said that the third young master had made a great contribution in killing the heavenly Kismet and would soon be promoted. With this promotion, he might even become a first-grade guardian general of the state. Now that the third young master was Lord Tai Shan and the emperor's sworn brother, one could imagine how limitless his future would be. Chapter 53-34. No one would offend such a promising young man unless they were extremely stupid. Otherwise, they should get along well with him. Third cousin. Bao Cuiping sobbed. How can you speak like this? Wasn't third cousin cursing his aunt, Madame Bao, to die early? As the general of Annan, was it appropriate for him to curse his official mother like this? However, Third Fu's patience with this little white flower had already ended. He felt disgusted at the sight of her. She had tried so hard to set him up with her good aunt, so let's not talk about it anymore. Now that the marriage had been settled, she was still trying to cause trouble. Instead of avoiding Wuxia, she was sticking to him. What was she up to? If Wuxia was not powerful, he would have been tricked by this woman. At the thought of this, third young Master Fu's eyes turned cold. He glanced at Bao Cuiping coldly like 2 pools of ice. Bao Cuiping shivered and could not help but feel sad. The man she loved was looking at her with such disdain and disgust. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife and she really wanted to die in front of everyone. Princess, I am not talking to you today because of my own matters. You have really misunderstood me. Bao Cuiping sobbed. I am here to beg you for fourth cousin's sake. The little crown princess said expressionlessly, only beauties can cry like pear blossoms. Your face is swollen like a pig's head and you don't look good when you cry. Don't cry like this to gain sympathy. Everyone, Prince Mo curved his lips in amusement. He held his wife's hand with one hand and nodded in agreement. Then he added, you don't look good when you cry even if your face is not swollen. Fourth young Master Fu was so angry that his entire body shivered and the hand holding Bao Cuiping also trembled slightly. This was too much. This was too much. Bao Cuiping looked like she was about to collapse. She was held in fourth young Master Fu's arms and cried even louder. Cousin, don't be afraid. With me protecting you, no one will dare to bully you, fourth young Master Fu said loudly. The moment he finished speaking, he saw everyone looking at him as if he was a fool. But then again, it was true. After all, his beloved cousin had been bullied until now, and this fourth young Master Fu had not been able to protect her. This fourth young Master Fu was probably not very smart. He could talk to his third brother, but could he be more important than Princess Wuxia, the crown princess? Fourth cousin. Bao Cuiping cried for a while and stood up slightly, but she was still leaning into fourth young Master Fu's arms. She looked at Princess Wuxia with her red and swollen eyes and said in a choked voice, Princess Wuxia, please go to the palace and ask Her Highness to take back the order. I can't harm fourth cousin. Fourth cousin deserves a better woman to love him. I can't be so selfish. I'm a girl from an ordinary family. My cultivation is ordinary, and my talents are also ordinary. I can't be selfish. We can't ruin fourth cousin's bright future. Cuiping. Fourth young master's eyes were slightly red. He held his cousin's hand tightly. I don't care. Cuiping, I don't like girls from noble families or noble families. I only like you. Fourth young Master Fu looked as if he was swearing an oath. He held Miss Bao's hands tightly. He could not control his emotions and his voice was slightly choked. Chapter 53-35. In the future, even if I marry a lady from a noble family, you will still be the number one person in my heart. For the rest of my life, no, it will never change. Cuiping, you are the woman I love the most. The crowd looked at the two people in front of them in a daze, as if they were looking at a fool acting. One was willing to be hit and the other was willing to be hit. Also, they were not very smart. Who could say such words in front of so many noble ladies and madams? Was this fourth young Master Fu a fool? Now that he had said this, his words would definitely spread throughout the entire capital by tomorrow morning. Which noble lady would dare to marry an idiot like him? Which noble lady would be willing to marry into the family and be her husband's puppet? Knowing that her husband had someone else in his heart, she would still throw herself into his arms. Are you stupid or am I stupid? Also, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Bao Cuiping obviously did not like fourth young Master Fu. She said those words for the sake of fourth young Master Fu's future, but in fact, she did not want to marry fourth young Master Fu. Unexpectedly, fourth young Master Fu was such a fool that he really believed this woman's words. He even said that he would love her forever. This was really a comical show. Princess Wuxia was a little angry now and said coldly, Bao Cuiping, what do you mean? Your fourth young Master Fu deserves a better woman's love. My husband is not worth it. Does he have to make do with a lowly slut like you? Do you have to rely on him? How is he not better than fourth young master? You are a woman with mediocre cultivation and talent. You are not even good enough for fourth young Master Fu, and you still want to hook up with my husband? Are you stupid or am I stupid? Or do you think everyone here is a fool who can be manipulated by a stupid woman like you? Her words were powerful, and the surrounding madams and young ladies nodded in agreement. The princess was indeed a princess. Not only was she good at fighting, but she was also sharper than anyone else. And third young Master Fu, who was holding the princess's hand, was so happy that he was about to fly. She admitted it. He had been acknowledged by his wife. His wife finally called him husband in front of outsiders. Ha, ha, he. Crown Prince Emo cast an indifferent glance at third Fu, who was laughing himself silly on the side, and commented with a frown, silly. The little stoic was silent. After quite a while, she said, you were even more foolish than him back then. Prince Emo, what was wrong with his wife? Ever since she gave birth to baby Emo, she seemed to like scolding him even more. On the other side, Bao Zuiping trembled slightly after being scolded by Princess Wuxia. She couldn't control her emotions and screamed, you're still talking about me like that? If you hadn't interfered, would third cousin, would he have despised me like this? Third cousin and I grew up together. We were childhood sweethearts. It's you. It's you. It's all your fault. She suddenly appeared and stole my man. You're so outstanding, why are you so shamelessly trying to steal my man? I hate you. Why didn't you die at the border? Why did you die on the battlefield? Everyone was flabbergasted. She had once again broadened their horizons. It turned out that a person could be shameless to this extent when they wanted to. Princess Wuxia and the King of Xinyuan had spent so many years at the border protecting the country and contributing so much to the country and its people. In the hearts of the common people, they were godlike figures. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.